Our Community Health Board meeting. Let's see, the agenda is on page
11.
11. Oh, I'm away. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Something else. I think this agenda might turn on laptop screen.
You know, when you first come into the document, there's this thing on the side that you can scroll with, and that goes away, and then you're like going like that.
Mastered
That doesn't always work for me, but when it works, it's really cool. Yeah.
But it goes away after a while, and I don't know how to get it back.
All right, so we will call to order approval. Item number 2 is approval of the meeting minutes from November 23rd, 2021. Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kavesi, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve the meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, meeting minutes are approved. Chairperson's report. We haven't had anything on a statewide. We do have a shack meeting coming up on Friday, and that'll be a virtual meeting, so that is available on Friday. Other than that, there isn't anything new that has changed that I'm aware of. So we'll move into consent business. I do have a few questions on some of these. Karen, do you want to come to the podium? And if anybody else, so we can just go down the list. 4.1.
My computer's thinking, so
Okay, it's thinking, that's a good thing. 4.1. Anybody have any questions other than myself? Okay, 4.1 is this $100,000 for incentives for people getting the COVID. But how can we possibly spend $100,000 between now and the end of December? Or have these gift cards and such been purchased and they can be handed out after the 31st of December?
So this is a budget amendment, I believe, if my
Well, yeah, didn't we approve this before?
Yes, this was approved before, and this is a budget amendment. So this had been approved, and so there is this, so we have been allowed, we did get clarification from the Minnesota Department of Health to be able to allow us to continue to use the funds through December 31st. And then the amendment will allow us to take some of the other funds through, I believe, 2023 or 2024. So that was a piece of it. So, but what we have been doing is we have been purchasing. We did make our last purchase of gift cards, I believe, just this week. And then we can use those through December 31st. And anything that we have purchased after the first of the year, we can continue to use, but we cannot. No, after the first of the year, we cannot purchase any more gift certificates or gift cards.
Okay. And if we have I have some angst over this. Is it bribery or is it incentives? So people, either way, depends on everybody's definitions. So somebody that already previously, they're not eligible. It's just somebody that walks in the door
First time.
from first
Yes.
time. Okay. All right.
Kind of a reward for being late.
Yeah, reward for being late. You're absolutely right. Well, it just doesn't set well with me.
Yeah, well, it is one of those, Commissioner Kavesi and I were just talking about this prior to the meeting, that every clinic that we hold, we have more adults coming in that are first-time vaccinators. And so that has been, the directive from the county board that we focus on vaccinations and getting everyone and anyone vaccinated that we can. So I look at it as an incentive and not bribery, I guess, Commissioner Ward. The chair would.
If I took one, would it be as an elected official, it'd be considered bribery.
Well, at the Health Services Advisory meeting this afternoon, Melanie announced that we were up to 62%. And we had been stuck at like 59, 60 for quite a while. Whatever's bringing people to their first vaccine.
Yes, and the age group from 16 to 49 is the age group that is the age group that is kind of underrepresented in our vaccine percentages. So that is really the target area or the target population that we're looking at right now. really wanting to get those individuals in. And then just so the board is aware, the MDH did approve for 16 and 17-year-olds also to receive booster vaccinations.
All right. And us old people are very high statistics of being vaccinated,
Yeah.
90 some, which in a way surprises me that we're more in there less, but anyway. Okay. Let's see, 4.2, any questions on 4.2? All right, 4.3, any questions there? 4.4, any questions there? 4.5, any questions there? 4.6, I have some questions there.
Can you, my computer's still trying to load.
Okay, 4.6 is the approve amendment to grant project 191934 COVID-19 response and vaccination implementation, epidemiology, and laboratory capacity for infectious disease and immunization of vaccines for children. It's page 127. Now, let's see, hold on, let me get the 127. I think it initially had like 400 and some, and then it backed down to 391. And then it said something about the total. So are we trying to get both those lumps, or did it get recalculated that it's 391,000? That's one thing I didn't understand. What we're really going after here. It was on page 129. It breaks it down. Grant project agreement start and the amount, and then but then the original was 429, and then the current, and then requested grant agreement expiration, then that gives a total. So are we getting 820 or are we getting 391?
I believe it is the 820. Because the original grant project start date, they started at 391. The original project agreement expiration date was on 12/31/21, and that was 429,000. So requested grant project agreement expiration date, which is 12/31/2023, is the 820,000.
And so this is the way I understand it, is this is all new money coming into Winona County for
Isn't 391?
COVID.
wasn't that-
391 was for 2021. Is what
Yeah,
I'm
that
reading.
was in April, and now
Mhm.
at the end of the year, we'll see 429. So the two of those together
Together.
totaled 820.
right,
Right, and we have until 12/31/2023 to
So
spend
2
it.
years.
right,
Correct.
Yeah.
2 years. But that's new money that's
Mhm.
coming into Winona County. Okay, and remember that for a discussion point later this evening. Now, one of the things, for some reason, they decided to underline on page 128, this whole thing about telecommunications certification is being added. Can you explain to me? It says we can't, grant does not and will not use any equipment, system, or services that uses covered telecommunications equipment or services. So what's that mean? We can't use computers to do our work or something?
No, I think what that means is that we can't purchase equipment for telecommunications.
For telehealth or anything, even though if you go the COVID route, you're supposed to socially distance, stay at home if you're not feeling good, and we can't buy equipment to do telehealth.
We can't use the grant funds to purchase the
Okay.
computer
Just
equipment. That
doesn't
is my
seem,
understanding.
just doesn't follow my logic. But there again, we're getting that kind of money, and that can, let's see now, funds. It does say support vaccination implementation and distribution, including staff salary and fringe benefits as needed to complete grant duties and support vaccination clinics. So we can take some of this money to pay for staffing.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
And it says rental and everything. So one of my questions, and I don't think he's here tonight, is that Ben Klinger insisted that we pass an emergency extended so that we could cover some of our costs for things that I see here, like rental of space, security, necessary support, community engagement, all these things that he talked about we needed to have to do the community health clinics. So instead of waiting for FEMA money, can we put some of those expenses into this grant? And know that we've got it, because the way he explained it, the FEMA was still questionable if it was even gonna come. So can we take his expenses and put them with this grant and know that they're paid for?
Well, from my understanding with the FEMA expenses is that Ben, like, emergency manager Klinger needs to apply and needs to state what the expenses are for. So he would need to state, 15 vaccine clinics at, $200, rental fee, and I don't know that those are the exact numbers, totaling a number, X number, and then he applies for that funding, and he's either approved or denied. If he's approved, then he has to submit once the funds are or once the vaccine clinics have taken place, then he submits all the receipts or receipts for that. So there's a difference between FEMA funding and this funding. It doesn't come. It is. So then he would after everything is done, he would then receive the funding, where we receive the funding up front, and then we have to document how we spent it.
Right. And see, I prefer to pay the bills with money I know I have than pay the bills with hoping I get money to pay the bills. And so I don't know how we're going to track this. Maybe Ken, will it be a separate fund, or, I mean, how are we going to track these kinds of things?
Yeah, the grants are tracked separately, for each individual grant. So that's not we do that with all of them.
All of them. So we should be able to, in a year and a half, know how much money we have left.
Well, yeah, because when we have an expense, we code it for that fund or that grant.
Yes.
Excellent.
Commissioner Kavesi.
I have a question on the monitoring. That's on page 130. One of the things we're agreeing to do is to build and/or maintain the capacity to monitor, analyze, and share data and trends. Does that include the tracking? Is the state no longer doing the tracking, or?
No, that does not. The monitoring does not. That
Okay.
does not include the tracking, the COVID,
Okay.
the contact tracing is in a
Yeah.
case investigation. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. No, that doesn't
Calling it
include that.
tracking, but it's tracing, right?
Yes, Minnesota Department of Health is doing that for
Good,
us at
okay,
this time.
because that would be a huge.
That would, you are, good question.
Well, and just in the way this is presented to us, I don't know what, some things are underlined, so they new improved to the grant, whereas a lot of things aren't underlined. So do we understand what the intent is here, that's what they're really going to, the standard they're going to hold this grant to?
It is my understanding that is underlined is newer for the 2022 to 2023. That is my understanding.
So then, I mean, we're just approving it. Do we have a budget, a worksheet that goes along with these dollars at this time?
Yes. I mean, to an extent, yes. I mean, it's a fluid document. So, I mean, if we run into a situation where, like I've said all along, all of our public health nurses had full-time jobs before the pandemic. And so if we have a very huge uptick in cases for the different programs that we administer, and we need to seek outside assistance, that budget, for staffing could look very differently. So, we've used some of the funding to pay for some of our EMS or some of our firefighters to be able to do some vaccine administration or assist us in vaccine clinics. So, it ebbs and flows, but we do quarterly reporting to MDH for the funds, and when those are submitted, we have to do a new projection for where the funds are going to be allocated.
So you could forward those reports to us so that we could see where this, where
Yes, I could.
where the dollars are being
We're
spent.
after 7 o'clock, so I'm going to move to approve the consent business.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the consent business. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Aye. Okay, thank you. Don't leave the room, please, probably. All right. General business, is there anything else to go before the Community Health Board?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to adjourn the Public Community Health Board meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? We're adjourned. All right. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start our meeting with the public comment, several people you may have seen, and hopefully our employees know. And where'd Miss Holty go? She left the room. There, no? Okay. There, no?
She's on Zoom.
Oh, she's on Zoom. Okay. Well, Winona County was privileged and honored at our Association of Minnesota Counties meeting last week from our, I'll use a lot of acronyms, MCIT, Minnesota Counties Intergovernmental Trust Board awards a County of the Year. And this is in regards to our workman's comp, our risk management aspects, our property aspects of lack of claims, but also being very active in prevention programs and education. And lo and behold, I think there was 8 from the department that drove up and accepted the award. It had to have been one of this year, one of the worst days to be on the road driving. And of course, car accidents go against this award. So luckily they made the trip to Bloomington and got home back to Winona without any traffic accidents or any fatalities, which would have been very embarrassing had we been County of the Year and we would have gone in the ditch. So this really goes to not only Maureen Holty and her staff of experts in the area, but also to all the Winona County employees, because if you haven't slipped and fallen this year, that was a good thing. Slipped and fallen, get the right tense, fallen, or didn't hit a deer with your squad car or any of those types of things, that contributed to us winning this award. So it is indeed a pleasure. And Ms. Holty, she back to her office, but her group did a great job in representing Winona County and getting us this award. So, and thank you all the employees. All right, now we will go to public comment. We have 2 minutes per speaker, and if there's people in the audience, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And then if there's anybody out on the Zoom, I don't see any names listed, but that's okay. So anybody that would like to address the county board, please step to the podium.
I'm Bernadette Rickert. I live at 1663 Gilmore Valley Road. And I just wanted to speak in regards to any possible COVID vaccine mandate or requirement. Nobel Prize winning physicist Richard Feynman said, "Learn from science that you must doubt the experts." When someone says science teaches such and such, he is using the word incorrectly. Science doesn't teach it, experience teaches it. If they say to you, science has shown such and such, you might ask, how does science show it? How did the scientists find out? How, what, where? Not science has shown, but this experiment, this effect has shown. And you have as much right as anyone else upon hearing about the experiments, but we must listen to all the evidence to judge whether a reasonable conclusion has been arrived at. So in order to be scientific, I won't just trust the experts at the CDC and FDA. There have been many drugs fully approved by the FDA that were later recalled because of all the ill effects, some of them years after they were approved. This COVID vaccine hasn't even been tested for 2 years yet. We do know that the COVID vaccines cause blood clots and inflammation, which have caused strokes, myocarditis, pericarditis, paralysis, blindness, heart attacks, and more. You can check the VAERS website to see some of the known effects of this vaccine so far. The evidence shows that the vaccine is not safe and is not a good solution to the COVID virus. Pressuring or mandating people to get the COVID vaccine will cause problems equal to or worse than the disease itself for many people. Every individual should be able to look at the facts about what is happening and make up their own mind about what medicines they choose to put into their own body. Please vote no on any vaccine mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? And I have to ask, Kay, is there anybody out in the internet world that wants to address the county board? I apologize, I do not see any extra names on our screen in the boardroom. Okay, go ahead, Kay. Thank you.
Kate Qualley, Planning and Environmental Services Director. Is Wayne Ty in the audience? Yes. Wayne, could you come forward? As you know, as part of the Planning and Environmental Services Department, and I'm not going to stand too close to this, because it sounded kind of scary earlier. We have community gardens at Stone Point, and they've been there for several years, and it's a combination of folks that grow for their families, Project Fine, as well as Wayne Ty. So Wayne, our County Board Chair, Marcia Ward, and the County Board of Commissioners would like to thank you and give you this certificate of appreciation for your 2021 work with the gardens and your donation of over 5,000 pounds of healthy, fresh grown produce to local food shelves. And you've got 2 minutes to say something. I have another award besides, but I'd like to give you this and shake your hand on behalf of the County Board and Commissioner Ward, our Chair.
Thank you very much. I do have a few comments that I would like to make. I really appreciate that the board funds the Stone Point Gardens. I think it helps the Hmong community and it helps the community at large. One of the things I wanted to say is that we practice soil conservation techniques out at the garden. Some of us have silt fences, erosion socks, we plant on the contour, we plant cover crops, we do what we call a strip gardening where you don't cultivate where you're not going to plant. We share these ideas with each other and we invite other gardeners to the Stone Point area and tell them, and we can show them how these things work. Many of us at Stone Point build nests for solitary bees. And out there, I see thousands of these bees every day doing their work. One of the privileges I had this fall, I was out to the gardens as thousands and thousands of monarch butterflies gathered before they went south on their journey. To me, that was evidence that they saw our garden area as a safe place to congregate. This summer, some of us got to participate in a videotape done by Ample Harvest, which brings together gardeners and food shelves nationwide. And our hope is that video will help food shelves even beyond Winona. The fact that there are Hmong gardeners there and those of us that have traditional American garden practices, we pool our ideas. And I think that's a good thing. And so I am hoping that you will continue to fund the Stone Point Gardens.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
in.
All right, thank you.
And to Wayne Ty's exact point, Nang Bang, who I don't think is here tonight, is another one of the market gardeners up there, and he and his family made a 2021 donation of fresh produce to the local food shelves as well. So we'll make sure that he gets a certificate, and thanks again.
Okay, thank you. All right, I saw some new people come in. Is there anyone wishing to address the county board at this time under the open public comment period? Okay, seeing nobody come and nobody joined us on the video screen, we'll move on. Thank you. Approval of the county board meeting minutes, 5.1, closed session, November 23rd. And 5.2, the county board meeting, November 23rd.
I move approval of the county board minutes for 5.1 and 5.2.
I'll second.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Kavesi, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve the county board meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, they are approved. Item 6, acknowledge receipt of the approved committee meeting minutes. 6.1 is the Planning Commission from October 21, 2021. And 6.2, Board of Adjustment, September 16th, 2021.
I'll move to acknowledge 6.1 and 6.2.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the meeting minutes from the Planning Commission, October 21, and the Board of Adjustment, September 16th, 2021. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Consent comments and approval of the agenda. And we have a very lengthy agenda. Commissioner Kavesi.
I just have a committee update at the end.
Okay, committee update. Excuse me, I've got it. Okay. Commissioner Meyer,
Committee update.
Commissioner Olson,
Nothing for me.
okay, Commissioner Jacob,
I'd like to pull 8.3 and 8.18.
8.3. And again, which one? 8.18.
18.
Okay, so that will make those 9.01 and 9.02. Okay, let me make sure I got this. All right, I need to pull 8.12 and 8.13 for separate votes. So I'll make those 9.03 and 9.04. And let's see, that one was pulled, and everything else is under general business. Okay, so, and let's see, Attorney Sonneman, did you have anything? And
Yeah, a couple
Administrator
things.
Fritz?
So just want to ensure you pull 8.3 and 8.18 was pulled,
Correct,
and 8.12 and 8.13 were pulled.
yes.
Okay. And also, in consideration of some of the people here that are giving presentations, if we can move the bond presentation before, let's see here, under department recommendations, if we could move the bond discussion before the Citizen Advisory Committee volunteer discussion, because that will put the first number of items on the agenda. Those are the people that are here, and rather than the other ones just
That's
require.
910 and 911.
Yeah, 910 and 911. You want to move those up to,
Yeah, whatever works, but just
Okay.
as long as they're in that list.
right, we get a better discount or a better rate if we move them?
I don't know
on
if we
the
can get much better rate. We can
Huh?
talk about
I
that
already gave you
later.
a thumbs up.
Huh?
I mean,
Did they bring? Okay, so we'll move those up to the first, after the items that were pulled, we'll discuss. Okay. All right, so that would be, actually, I would have like 9.05. And
So above the
9.06,
first-
be above the 9.1
Above the first public.
Right.
hearing. Okay.
presentation. Okay, all right. So a motion to approve the amended agenda would be in order.
I would so move.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Kavesi for an amended agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, all right. Mr. Fritz, if you would read. I do, before we get started though, I do have a question. And I do have a question because we just approved in our Community Health Board a number of grants, and then they come to our county board for approval. I do have a question for Attorney Sonneman in that trying to follow the money trail. A lot of the public, and a lot of these are public health grants. So a lot of the public health dollars come from the federal government to the state government, and then the state government to local governments. And we're approving these for local things. What strings are attached currently to accepting grant dollars that didn't exist prior to COVID? And prior to some of the legal challenges that are going on now.
Excuse me. It depends on what the grant language is. So each grant has its own strings.
Okay,
So I would have to look at each one of these.
okay, so,
But they are looked at by our office and reviewed by Ms. Sanis's department.
Right.
So,
okay, because I will, when we get to 8.18, it brings my point to high clarity. So if we accept these grants tonight, is there any way to unaccept them if there's strings attached to them that we don't find that we can follow?
again, it depends on the provisions in the grant. Sometimes there's provisions to withdraw from the grant. I know with the, well, I haven't looked at the WinLAC one, but as you recall, Chair Ward, like in the Root River, you know, you can file out of those, but with certain notice.
Okay, all right. It'll come to light.
I can't answer it specifically without looking at the grant.
Right, and there is a lot of pending litigation at a higher level, federal level, of some of these imposed mandates. And where I'm headed is that by accepting these grants, are we,
Is it tied to the federal mandate?
right, because they're still being challenged, and they're not, as I understand it, they're not law yet, and they were trying to create rules, but that seems to all be in litigation, or a lot of it is.
And I think it again, looking at the grant language itself, but I think I know what you're getting at, that it's like accepting federal grants and that you have to have, you know, follow equity and I don't know without looking at those grants.
Okay, all right. Well, we may want to change how we look at grants moving forward. Okay,
A good thing to just make sure the fine details are looked at. Yeah.
yes, okay. All right, so with that, Mr. Fritz, can you read our amended agenda, please?
So the agenda was approved, right?
Yes.
Okay. So consent business, committee recommendations. 8.1, approve pictometry agreement amendment. 8.2, approve interim use permit for Jeffrey and Amanda Evanson to allow auto repair business. 8.3 was pulled. 8.4, approve subrecipient agreement with Winona Area Chamber of Commerce to provide American Rescue Plan business and not-for-profit grant management. 8.5, approve new liquor license application for Pickwick Inn. 8.6, approve American Recovery Plan COVID-19 vaccine incentive funds. 8.7, approve Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board grant project agreement for Center for Disease Control Crisis Response Cooperative Agreement COVID-19 Public Health Workforce Supplemental Funding. 8.8, make sure I catch these. 8.8, approve renewal of Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board grant project agreement for administration of Minnesota Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. 8.9, approve renewal of grant agreement with SEMCAC for prevention, education, screening, and treatment of sexually transmitted infections. 8.10, approve amendment number 1 for grant contract number GRK 181906 for child and teen checkups, administrative services to medical assistance eligible children birth through 28 years of age. 8.11, approve amendment to grant project agreement 191934 COVID-19 response and vaccination implementation, epidemiology, and laboratory capacity for infectious diseases and immunization of vaccines for children. 8.12 was pulled. 8.13 was pulled. 8.14, approve application of limited term invasive species removal grant from Minnesota Department of Agriculture for 2022. 8.15, approve amendment of 2020-2021 Minnesota Department of Agriculture grant to complete Oriental bittersweet and noxious weed eradication deliverables. 8.16, approve 2022-2023 feedlot program delegation agreement and work plan. 8.17, approve 2022 funding and accept 2022 aquatic invasive species management plan for soil and water conservation district. 8.18 was pulled for further discussion. 8.19, approve Minnesota 2021 voting equipment grant resolution. 8.20, confirm payment of disbursements. And I believe that would conclude the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jacobs, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the consent agenda as read. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. All right. So going back to the original 8.3, approve resolution requesting Mndot to resurface Highway 74 north of Elba. Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, and I see our highway engineer is here. Dave, would you mind coming to the podium? So first of all, plenty of work that's gone into drafting that. Thank you so much for your time and work on that. Thank you to the board for supporting this issue that's, right in the heart of my district out there. But I wanted to let the board know and ask Dave if it's all right. My intent would be to take this resolution now and go to my local townships and city councils close within that proximity and maybe try to get them to adopt similar resolutions or maybe even use yours as some type of template. Would you have any concerns with that, Dave? Or?
Oh, absolutely not. That's a work product that I put together for the county, and once the board approves that, I mean, it's a completely public document, so that would be, yeah, completely fine.
Okay, and then, so I would work at that, probably over the winter, and then come back hopefully in probably early spring, and ask for a meeting perhaps with that our board might invite Senator Goggin and Representative Drazkowski and any townships or city councils that have adopted resolutions to come to a meeting facilitated here at our board level, just to draw, and of course DOT, because that's really who we're petitioning here. So I didn't want to just send this through on consent business because there's been a lot of work done, and I just want to make sure everything that I'm doing is good with the rest of the board. I guess I have whatever liberty I want to work within my district, but don't want to surprise the board with what I'm doing either. So,
Any questions? I do have a question. Timing, life is all about timing. Should this be sent now with follow-up after Commissioner Jacob goes and gets things from the townships and the towns, or should it be a consolidated effort? Any experience with that?
I actually sent a copy of this to several Mndot staff today, just giving them a heads up that this is on the county board agenda for this evening. I would think when we have, assuming it gets approved, a signed copy, I think should go to them, promptly to the Mndot staff, and then, certainly any follow-up additional, public participation that takes place would then add to that effort.
Okay, all right, because I know Commissioner Jacob, you had some petitions that were signed by lots of.
I've got pretty close to 700 signatures on a petition, so I would anticipate that kind of reinvigorating my local community with resolutions. I'll generate. I certainly want to see at least 1,000 signatures on that petition. So I would move. First of all, thank you, Dave, for your work, and then move to approve 8.3.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to approve 8.3. Approve resolution requesting Mndot to resurface Highway 74 north of Elba. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, that passes. All right. And thank you, Dave, for working on that. Yeah, a lot of people around the state of Minnesota can't believe that we're special. We got a gravel state highway. We are special. All right. Then to 8.12, page 134. And I just would like a separate vote on that. Because I did not see any type of performance factors built into the agreement.
Move to approve 8.12 and 8.13.
I will second.
Motion to approve 8.12 and 8.13 made by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, opposed, nay. Nay. All right. Okay, now we're moving into 8.18, which is on page 272. And that is the approve WinLAC prioritization and public outreach project agreement and supporting sub-agreements. And Commissioner Jacob, you did pull that?
Yeah, so page 290, 12.2, contractors must be fully vaccinated. So I just can't get from the services that we're trying to provide within the county here with water and soil conservation and to a point that we're taking some type of enforcement action. We're tying our contracts to vaccination status, and we don't. The last time I asked Karen Sanis what fully vaccinated meant, whether that meant 2 shots and a booster or not a booster, we didn't even know that. So because of that reason, I'm not going to support this. This is just going beyond the intentions of, and it's creating, as I've warned all along, it's creating another level of government that we're having to answer to here. So not within the scope of what we should be doing on a soil and water issue.
Commissioner Kavesi.
On another issue, I lost the page. This, this agreement can be canceled. I lost the page. When you were talking earlier about grants and canceling them, this agreement can be canceled. Just a minute. It's page 279. It says, this agreement may be canceled with or without cause by either party upon 30 days written notice. So, and then it goes on with some other language, but that just gives you an idea that there are cancellation clauses built into some of these grants.
Well, this is the one that luckily it caught my attention. This is where I was going, Attorney Sonneman. This is a grant from Minnesota Pollution Control. And I don't know what the original date on the grant was, but they do have that built in, that the contractor will cover, will do the policing on vaccinations. Now, I did try and get a hold of, we have the Wabasha Soil and Water, and we have the Root River Soil and Water, which are very small organizations. And they're volunteer, pretty much, they're elected. The members are elected to those boards, but I don't.
That is part of this too.
Right, but in this contract, it's Wabasha and the Root River that are being the contractors to doing this water testing for chlorides.
Okay.
So my concern is that I don't know that those two organizations realize what if they do this work, what they're signing up for. And I don't know if it's even legal to be in there, that is a requirement. And again, it's this whole idea that now this was a state, MPCA is Minnesota. So is Minnesota already imposing vaccination standards on every level of government down the chain? It's new. I haven't gotten the word. Kate Qualley, looks like you have some information.
Board of Commissioners, Emily Zanone from the MPCA is on the call, as is Sheila Harms, our water planner. And I think that the language in here is pretty similar, if I'm not mistaken, Attorney Sonneman and Attorney Nuttall, to any of the contracts that we've seen come across from the state, if I have that right.
I haven't seen, and I don't know about Attorney Nuttall, but I see that this is dated, or at least the contract terms were dated or revised September of 2021. Frankly, I've never seen this in a contract that I've seen across my desk, but I haven't looked at some things that Sheila or Ms. Harms may have sent me, given I haven't been in the office.
Who are we asking to enforce this? Who's the enforcer?
Looks like Emily maybe wants.
It looks like the way I read it, it's the contractor, and that means Wabasha Soil and Water and Root River Soil and Water.
I see Emily is on
Okay.
that, Chair, if you want.
So maybe they
And I'll be back if you need me.
Okay, Emily, can you clarify?
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. Can you guys hear me?
We can't read lips.
Can you hear me okay?
Can't read lips. Know the face.
Can you hear me now?
You can't read lips.
I don't know why my audio isn't working.
Bottom left corner of your screen, Emily, maybe?
Emily, I hear your voice
Not working.
fine,
Sheila,
so I don't know
Sheila,
what it
are
is
you
with
there?
the. Yes, Madam Chair, I am here. I can hear Emily, but
Can anybody
I,
explain this? It just seems like it's the first contract, and again, with the scope of the packet here tonight, it was just something that,
It refers in paragraph 12.2 to HR/LR policy 1446, covered individuals must be fully vaccinated. So I don't know if that's MPCA policy or state.
well, being the length of our meeting tonight, could
Yeah.
we put this on the
Can we-
table, get clarity, and bring it back to a future meeting?
I would recommend that, because like I said, this is the first time I've seen that.
Yeah.
I would so move then that
Okay.
we bring it back as soon as we can.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson to put it in the table until staff can more research it. And I guess part of that, I would want to know that the two soil and waters that are agreeing to be contractors agree with, if that is required, if they're agreeing to that requirement. I would like their input.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, the question I would like to ask, it'd be better if we could all approve it. So if, I would like to inquire about if we change that language, does that nullify it for the MPCA or would they allow that?
I'll work with Ms. Armstrong.
I mean, I don't want us to lose the grant.
Okay, all right, so that is tabled. All right, moving.
One of the questions is that maybe we can get it from the chat in terms of the timeliness of the grant submittal, in case that gets messed up by moving it. Sorry, I didn't move it totally, but I'll just check with them via chat.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
all right, moving on to
Did we vote?
table. Okay, the motion, I'm sorry,
Did we
we
vote?
did not. The motion is to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Okay, it is tabled. All right. We covered all of those. Now we want to move into general business, and we're going to move up the 9.10, authorize an award sale of estimated 6,925,000 general obligation county bonds 2022A. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Bruce from with others. If it's all right with you, I'm going to be referring to the sale day report, and that is a very hot night. That I think you have in front of you, and this covers both the 21A bond issue as well as the 21B or 22A bond issue. So I thought if we could cover both, then you can consider the two resolutions in front of you.
Okay.
So this first sale day report, if you see, is the 21A bonds, which was in the amount of $10 million to fund a portion of the jail project. You'll recall that around the same time last year, you issued the 2020A bonds to fund about $10 million. This is the second piece of the financing. And then the 22A bonds is the third piece. And these two bond issues, 21 and 22, will close within about a week of each other. So this issue will close at the end of the month, and then the 22As will close the first week of January. So we took bids at 10:30 this morning on both bond issues on the county's behalf. And if you flip to the inside cover of the competitive sale results, you can see that we received 6 bids on the county's behalf on this A bond issue. And the low bid was with a true interest cost of 1.89%. We had been assuming about 2.33% for this financing, so it's roughly 40 basis points better than projected. And that just means lower interest costs over the next 23, 24 years for the taxpayers of Winona County. We received a little bit less in premium on this bond issue than we thought we might. It's hard to predict exactly how much premium the winning bid will have as part of their bid. But as a result, this A bond issue, or the 21A bond issue, didn't yield quite enough in revenues for the project as we had anticipated. So you'll see when we get to the 22A bond issue, we bumped that one up by a couple $100,000 to get to the $18 million overall funding target between the two bond issues. Both of them stayed bank qualified, which gets you the lowest overall interest rate. And both bond issues have the state's credit enhancement. You may recall that from the last bond issue. So in addition to your full faith and credit, the state is also pledging its credit enhancement, and this allowed the bonds to have a AAA rating from Standard & Poor's in addition to your AA rating from Standard & Poor's. So your rating was affirmed with flying colors. The conversation went very, very well. It's nice to have that backstop from the state credit enhancement program just to get the lowest possible interest rate.
I thought we were talking before we ever, like 0.5%. No, did I not remember right?
For interest?
Yeah,
No.
we were never that low?
We were hoping for anything under 2.
Under
Would be great.
Okay.
Last year's bond issue was about 1.81%, and both of the bond issues here today are in the ballpark of 1.9%, and we are really happy to be under 2%, given the long duration of these financings. Yeah. So, Madam Chair and Commissioners, if you'll turn to the bid tabulation, I won't go through all these details, but you can see the 6 bids received. Winning bid from FHN Financial out of Memphis, and then you can see the subsequent bids. And what's striking here is that all 6 bids were within about 0.1% or 10 basis points of each other. So even the last bid would have been under 2%, and this really reflects aggressive bidding to try to win the county's bond issue. I did include a couple of pages from the revised debt schedules. Following that, I won't go through that in any detail. You will see a chart in a moment that stacks the 3 bond issues, the debt service for each of those on top of each other. But really quick, before I go into the B bond, or excuse me, I keep on calling it the B, is the 22As. Do you have any questions about the 21 issue? Okay.
And again, why, so the public understands, why did we break them out?
Great question. Madam Chair, we took a close look at doing 1 consolidated financing versus 2. And because of this thing called bank qualification, you have to issue less than $10 million in a given calendar year. So with $18 million of funding as the target, we ran the numbers just assuming 1 $18 million issue, non-bank qualified versus 2 issues bank qualified. And that latter approach is going to save the county over $500,000 by going bank qualified.
Their rules, not our rules.
Oh, no. Yes, great point. If Congress actually got its act together and raised the bank qualification limit, I would be the first one to say, issue it all at once. That's more efficient. But the interest rate differential on BQ is so much better that it made sense to do the 2 bonds.
It's a lot of extra paperwork.
It is, absolutely.
They've had that $10 million cap for long decades.
Yeah, it's really 3 bonds, right?
Yeah, it ended up being three by the time we were done. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
2 here tonight.
See,
But
we
we
should
took-
have only built a $10 million project.
But we took advantage of the bank qualified status on all 3 of them, which is because the way we staggered them, and so it really worked out well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Commissioners, the report for the 22A bonds is pretty similar. You'll see that we received 4 bids on your behalf on the second bond issue with Northland Securities out of Minneapolis being the winning bidder. And the interest rate on this bond issue is 1.92%. Now you might ask, well, how come the first one got a slightly better rate than the second one and more bidders? And that's because we knew we would probably have a little bit of fall off. A lot of underwriting firms don't like to hold bonds in inventory or on their order sheet past the end of the fiscal year. But it really made a very nominal difference in terms of the interest rate. So we were pleased how that turned out with the interest rates being very close to each other. Here also I included the bid tabulation so you can see all 4 of the bids. Again, very competitive bidding to win this B bond issue, which again has been upsized slightly from 6.9% to 7.3% in order to have the overall funding target of $18 million financings. And then finally, before I get to the rating report, I know this is illegible. I apologize for the small size, but I think right after the 22A report on your packet, you can see a chart. And what I wanted to do here is just note, you've seen iterations of this chart many, many times in the past. So when you stack up all of the bond issues here, 2020, 2021, and 2022, you can see that the level debt service for all of these is going to be just over 1.4%, 1.44%. You may recall that we were trying to, when we were thinking of a $25 million funding target, we were trying to stay under $1.6 million. And here we are funding $28 million of project costs, and yet the debt service is well below 1.5%. So really shows the continued benefit of the low interest rate environment for Winona County. And if the sales tax initiative is successful, of course, this will not be a debt levy. This will be covered by the quarter cent sales tax. So we show it as a debt levy because that's all we can do at this point, but we're very pleased that we're able to help you get that overall interest cost as low as possible. And then finally, Madam Chair and Commissioners, I did want to note, and we included the rating report here, that the county's AA rating was approved again or affirmed with flying colors by S&P. They really were very pleased with the strength and resiliency of the local economy during the ongoing pandemic and the county's fiscal management and strong practices, which are really a great reflection on you as decision makers and also on your staff. So there was really no downward pressure from S&P as to your rating, and they were really only seeing the potential for an upgrade in the future. We know, we've told them though that, you know, it's likely that it would be some time before the county's next bond issue, so don't hold your breath, but they were very pleased with what they saw from Winona County. So with that, I would take any questions or ask you to consider the two resolutions in front of you.
Any questions? Like a lot of people said, the only good thing about this, in my opinion, is that interest rates are low.
They are indeed.
They are, that is a plus, because I know some people that built, 10 years ago, the interest rates weren't near as attractive. So
Madam Chair,
that's one plus. Commissioner Meyer.
I would move to approve, what are we on, 9.10 and 9.11 with the resolutions for the bonds. Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the bonds for, I guess we'll just say Series 2022A and Series 2021A. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, it passes. 3-2. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And was there another resolution, or did you just?
We did them both.
You did them both.
We did them both.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Safe travels. Hopefully like we said, we won't be using your services in the near future. See you in 18 years, maybe, huh?
That's right.
All right, moving on, 9.1, receive presentation for bigger staff findings of fact and petition for amendment and conduct a public hearing. Ms. Qualley? And this is on page 295, if anybody's trying to follow along. Oh. Good evening, Eric.
Okay, the November Planning Commission meeting took action regarding this request, so this is a follow-up. This request is to essentially change two official documents that the county has. One is the comprehensive land use plan, and the other is the official zoning map. It does require a public hearing at each step, both at the Planning Commission and the County Board. So thus, we do have to touch on both of these issues. The recommendation that staff has put forward is to approve that with the findings of fact document that's attached to it. We have a quick PowerPoint. The amendment request is involving a singular property of 8 acres. It currently, according to the comprehensive land use plan, is classified as rural residential service. This request would revert it back to agricultural natural resource according to the old comprehensive land use map. The second part of this is to rezone the property from what its current district is, which is I, industrial, back to agricultural. The property has traded hands, and the new owner wishes to homestead this parcel. The I district prevents that individual from actually seeking a permit to build a new house. So that's really the impetus of this request. Next slide.
And Eric, before you leave, just looking at where it lays, it's kind of out in the middle of the field.
Right.
So why was it ever zoned as industrial? And
It was originally zoned I in 1973 by the property
the owners had requested it.
Yes.
Okay,
And that was very common in those older generations of zoning ordinances from the 70s to the 80s. In the mid to late 80s, we had tons of what I would call spot zoning corridors. It seemed like there was a trend that anytime they petitioned the county board or planning commission, they'd give them a rezoning. So you actually had dozens and dozens of spot zoning districts out there. In 1988 and 89, we vanquished most of those, but this one was rather protected by the property owners. They were very, I think, outgoing and adamant that it stay that way. So this is one that throughout time has kind of kept its eye district for various purposes.
Okay.
The slide that you see is the current zoning map. And we're talking about this purple boundary that's located off of 248. And the parcel looks larger than what it actually is. If you follow that white line that's to the north, that's actually the State Highway 248 right of way. So the 8 acres is that's independent of that right of way line. Next slide. This is a snippet of the comprehensive land use classification. And I tried to call out that little blue area that was classified due to its current zoning back in the late 90s. This was carried over into the 2014 comp plan. So it's still carrying that rural residential service. And this request is to revert it back to green, like the surrounding properties in all direction. Next slide. A couple of pictures. One on the left is down, it's kind of a shelf property. There's a change in elevation of 30 feet. The one on the right is showing right off of Highway 248. The picture on the left is down below. There's a river and stream corridor. There's some floodplain associated, and there's some other mapping exhibits that just show the nature of the property. Next slide. Yeah, I think the one on the right really shows kind of the change in topography. The current property owner has done extensive cleanup with the property. There's quite a bit of weed and nuisance trees that he's removed. And there's also been a lot of storage of old equipment that has been removed out of there. So the property owner has been very proactive in trying to clean up that particular property. Next slide. Okay, essentially it's 8 acres. It's not conducive to agricultural purposes. However, it does have some, I think, merits to light scale, garden, trees, natural environments, since there is a stream corridor in the staff report and materials, we call out that there is also shoreland and floodplain associated with it. As far as the intent of building a house, the applicant has demonstrated that it's very manageable to do that. I was up there a week or two ago and conducted soil borings with a septic contractor, and I think they have found an area that will be conducive for putting a septic system. So they are moving ahead with that thought in mind. Next slide. And this is the LiDAR, the elevation. The red arrow would be approximately with where the building site would be. And those yellow lines are showing changes in 10 feet in elevation. So as you get down to the 690, the stream corridor, you're looking all the way up to about 725, 730. So you can see that there's definitely change in elevation and grade that is associated with this 8-acre parcel. Next slide. Showing the shoreland. It is a public water branch of that stream. So we also have zoning ordinance requirements regarding development and setbacks and things of that nature. One on the right is showing the floodplain. So, when we look at this practical sense, reverting it from an I district to agricultural, Realistically, with the floodplain and those other requirements, it was probably not a real viable industrial use type property to begin with.
But it was taxed as industrial, correct?
I believe there was assessment, yeah. Yeah, it wasn't homestead, so yes, there was probably a higher tax rate that was associated with it. Next slide. This is incorporating the new floodplain data. This is what will be the new floodplain, so it shows the base flood elevations that have been estimated with it. Again, where the red arrow is the estimated area that the person would be looking at building a pole or garage type building and a house that would be associated with the property.
The tan, they wouldn't be allowed to build within.
They would, but it would take some substantial more review.
Oh, because it's under.
Because, yeah, we have to look at grades and elevation, and there'd be some issues with flood insurance and underwriting. It would be more involved if they were to pursue anything down in the shaded area. Next slide. The township, in effect, is Rolling Stone, and the petitioner did have a meeting with the township board, and that township indicated support for this. That's moving its way through the planning commission, county board to make those changes according to our official controls. No additional comments were received from the neighbors. Conclusion, petitioner again wishes to add a home site. Approval would allow that to carry through, and it would essentially revert the property back to a similar state of the surrounding vicinity of properties, back to agricultural. Recommendation is that to consider all the testimony and the materials that are in the packet, and to support the planning commission's recommendation to move these two changes through the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan. Okay, with that, take any questions, and the petitioner might be here, but again, we do have to technically hold a public hearing to move this along.
Jacob.
Well, I just say that since I sit on the planning commission, this was just very non-controversial, and the person who bought the property has made significant improvements, really cleaned it up. This just seems like a win-win, both for the community that surrounds that area and for the applicant. And I did ask the applicant if they were aware of what I thought was a small building envelope up in the corner, and it sounds like you've described that quite well, and so they're aware of all that. So Eric, my question for you then, is the next step then to open a public hearing, or what's it?
Yes.
Okay.
To have a public hearing.
Okay. Well, then I would move to open a public hearing.
I'll second.
We have a motion to open the public hearing made by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Meyer. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Is there anyone wishing to speak, for or against the petition? Or is there anyone wishing to speak for or against the petition? I have a question, and maybe I'm not
This
understanding
is
it.
the public's time.
Yeah, well, I didn't see anybody stepping.
Well,
Okay, we can close
you
it.
do your
We
three,
can
and
close
then
it.
we'll close it, and then you can ask your questions.
All right. I should have asked it before, but because
Yeah,
Eric,
you can
Eric
ask
asked me if I had a question, and I did.
You will
So I'll
have
hold it.
so I'm
Anybody
not-
wishing to speak for or against the petition? Anybody wishing to speak for or against the petition? Last time, anybody wishing to speak for or against the petition? And
I'll move to close public hearing.
that's not, that's, the person on the screen is not,
No,
no, that's Emily. Okay. All right. So motion to close the public hearing made by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, public hearing is closed. Now, Eric, I have my question. And maybe I'm not understanding enough. Why are we going from like rural residential to ag? What's the
It's rural
distinguishing?
residential service. It's a big difference. with
Okay,
that
what,
RRS,
explain,
the
okay, explain that.
comprehensive plan. Most of the little unincorporated hamlets in the county carry that RRS.
Okay,
It
RRS.
allows it for, it's recognizing typically historic other use other than ag. So your communities like Ridgeway, Waitoka, Pickwick carry that classification. So they could recognize that there is a possibility of residential or commercial or possibly industrial. It's just recognizing in the comp plan that it's already halfway there to development purposes.
And what, that was something that was done again back in the 70s by the
Yeah.
previous, okay,
Yeah.
previous owner.
Yeah, and from the 70s to the 80s, it was just recognizing that it was already considered for other purposes than ag, but
Okay.
now in retrospect, 40, 50 years later.
But it never was developed as an RRS.
Correct.
Concept.
It did get the I district, but then they were using it for industrial storage purposes, previous property.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I'll probably have another question for Eric. I'm just in trying to follow what the next step is here. Are we looking for a motion now to amend the comprehensive plan
And the zoning ordinance.
and the zoning ordinance?
Yep. Yep, if you look at,
Wait, okay, so isn't that 9.5? Like 4 down?
Yeah.
I thought that was weird when I saw this agenda. That normally
Right,
you
this
would do
is-
it right
Well,
away.
That's for their CUP, isn't it?
Is that right?
Well, 9.5 is page 546.
This is for us, at this point, we're at a point where we're trying to rezone it so we can get to their building on less than 40.
And technically, can we do that all in one meeting? I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of times we don't do.
Well, we do at the planning commission.
all the
level.
time, yeah.
technically, it's two aspects. And
Okay,
I guess the proper order is to allow the reclassification. And then the second, which is included in the motion, right, included in a separate bullet item, is to actually seek the rezoning. So we're asking for those two items to be clarified.
And this was all submitted as one agenda item. From planning, my understanding is that it was split into the public hearing component and then later the discussion and approval motions. So I think that's 9.1 and 9.5 on your agendas.
So Stephanie, you're saying this is not the time that we make the,
If you're following your agenda, you should wait till 9.5 to have your discussion and motions regarding the amendments.
okay.
That was, we usually don't do things that,
No.
we usually,
It's a
there
little
is some kind of break between actions. Okay,
Okay, yeah.
that was my thought.
well, didn't they apply for a CUP too?
No,
Or no, they
Not
haven't
yet.
got that far because
I
they're
didn't see
waiting on the,
they wouldn't need a they wouldn't need a CUP for this 8 acres because the 8 acres. is
Parcel
a
record.
Parcel of record.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we've done
We're
what
done.
we need to do with 9.1.
Correct.
All right, okay, thank you. Did anybody have any other questions? No, okay, all right. Then moving on, 9.2, which is again, conduct a public hearing on the 2022 budget, the 2022 fee schedule, and the transportation sales tax projects. And that starts on page 316. So, Mr. Fritz, are you gonna?
Yeah, there's no
No action.
presentation
Right.
on the budget. It's, the documents are there. They've been
And
previously
there's
vetted.
no action.
No, it's
tonight.
just the public hearing and then the item would be on the 28th board meeting.
Right, it's just if anybody has any questions.
Right.
So that we're looking for a motion to open the public hearing?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
and
would
then-
move, I would so move.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Kvesi to open the public hearing in regards to the budget and the fee schedule and the transportation sales projects. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we're in a open public meeting, public hearing. Anybody wishing to address the issues of the county budget or the fee schedule or the transportation projects? Is there anybody wishing to address any of the topics?
Yeah, we didn't have anybody sign up here, although we had two that we referred to the assessor's office for specific tax questions.
Anybody, nobody out in the, I see nobody listed on our board in the hinterlands. Now, the budget or the fee schedule has all been gone through by all the department heads, and it was a line, redlined, any
correct.
changes? So if anybody that has those fees, they can look at that. And we have, always have the option to change them mid-year if we find something that
Yeah, the
is-
fee ordinance can be changed.
Yeah.
As well as the budget can be amended too, so.
And any questions or concerns? So the budget is still at a 3%?
Yeah, the budget, it has a 3% property tax levy in it.
It's just my personal preference is that just tonight approving a grant that's new money, that's almost $800,000 plus for COVID and all the money that's flowing into counties because of COVID. I am, after being to the AMC conference and talking to a lot of other counties across the state, I guess I was hopeful that because of all this new money, we could have maintained like a 0% levy increase, because if money that's been allocated through the budget isn't spent now that we're getting all this COVID money, will that automatically go into a reserve account?
Yes.
Okay, so we may be building, it may be a year where we're building some reserves back into our system because we are getting all this new money that's coming into the county.
In the end, depending on how it's handled, if it's not spent, if budget money isn't spent, it goes back to the reserve. And in effect, the COVID money does have an impact on or can have an impact on the reserves.
Right. But the next guy will have to figure that out because you won't be here.
Part of the thing is that it's still a one-time revenue source.
Right.
So in order to make sure you don't create a situation, and we talked about this in the budget discussions, but that you create a situation where you kind of offset the increase each year, and then once that money isn't available, all of a sudden you have to take care of the ongoing annual expenses that have increased over that period. So you can dampen the increase, is what you did this year, instead of having a larger increase. You some of that money to dampen that increase.
Okay. All right. No other comments on the budget or the fee schedule or the transportation?
I think you have to call
Projects.
3 times for the public
Yeah.
hearing. We're still in a public hearing
Right,
right now.
right. So I've done that twice. Well, I did it when we opened. Okay, okay. Anybody wishing to address the Winona County Board about the budget, the transportation projects, or the fee schedule? Is there anyone wishing to address the Winona County Board about the budget, the sales tax projects, or the fee schedule? Okay, seeing nobody, I'll motion.
Close public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, closed. All right. Moving on. 9.3, receive presentation of parking needs analysis. Okay, we received this report. Mr. Kramer, are you gonna?
Yes, in September, the board approved proceeding with a parking study. The firm that we used is Walker Parking Consultants. We essentially leveraged some previous work that the city of Winona had done in using this consultant. Administrator Fritz and I both thought that when we got to the final report, it would be worthwhile to have the consultant come and do an in-person presentation of their findings and their recommendations. So we do have David Garza from Walker Parking Consultants. He came from Indianapolis to make a short presentation to you today. So with that, I'll introduce Mr. Garza.
Thank you, Dave, Madam Chair, and Commissioners. My name is David Garza. A little cough here, I'm sorry.
That's
With
okay.
Walker Consultants.
Do you need some water? We have water.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. We did, as Dave alluded or set this discussion, we performed a parking study this fall for the county. And we've previously been engaged with the city of Winona and the Winona Port Authority on parking throughout the downtown. And in 2017 and 2018 have done parking analysis for those public agencies. Next slide, please. So for those joining, via web, this is a little about our firm. We're architects, engineers. I'm a planner. We focus on parking and mobility for communities of various sizes and different market segments throughout the country. I'm in Indianapolis. I serve as the project manager on this project. I'm an urban planner. I'm a consultant. And I worked with Mr. Fritz and Mr. Kramer on this study here. Next slide. So I'd just like to walk you through the report that you have received. We did what we call a parking needs analysis, where we looked at your current parking supply, the county spaces within a study area that we determined. We looked at future needs, so that's the jail project and the parking needs for that project, as well as some of the other stakeholders in this district, such as Fastenal, that are kind of creating parking shifts and changes kind of in parking behavior in this area. And then we looked at alternatives and solutions, so ways you can better manage your parking, lower cost opportunities and infrastructure needs, and kind of some cost ideas on what that looks like with the conclusion. Next slide, please. As stated, it was current conditions, it was existing conditions, and it was alternatives and solutions. That was our 3 core elements that we delivered in this report. Next, please. So, to get a handle on existing opportunities, we counted every physical space that, is within county parking lots. We had performed some previous occupancy studies pre-pandemic. This is important to say because we know pandemic has influenced parking behavior. We've had work from home, work at home, remote policies, which impact, employee user activity. So we wanted to make sure that we were looking at this with a lens of, 100%, employees present. So we used previous study data. So we looked from there, we looked at the building program of the jail and any potential additional spaces needed. Then we looked at Fastenal's building program and what they have planned in their site plan and their subsequent surface lots over here on 3rd and 4th, and considered there's the potential for parking spillover. We assessed that there is not. They're in fact overparked. Essentially, at project stabilization, when they have all their facilities online, they will be overparked. So that was one of our conclusions. And then we looked at these alternatives. So next, please. So this was our study area. It was about a 3.5 block area. We have 2nd and 4th as our north and south boundary, and then we have Winona Street, or the bridge there, as our east and west, and Johnson, as that east-west. So next slide, get to just the numbers here real quick. We had 378 total spaces. These are this is a breakout of your off-street facilities. So that's the county lots, and then we did include the on-street spaces too. This is important because the on-street spaces do provide parking access for county visitors and for some employees utilizing those spaces. So it was important we included those spaces in this survey too. So we have 378 total spaces, and then we understand, or we try to understand, the reduction of space by 10%. You have a lot of snow on the ground here. That affects, the access of spaces. And people maneuvering in and out of space affects the availability of that space. So we reduced by 10% to get what we call an effective supply factor. So next slide here. We looked at 3 counts throughout the day, again, pre-pandemic, and we found a 1 p.m. occupancy peak where of this 3-block area, you had 298 parked vehicles, which was about 79% occupancy. So that was, a pretty fully occupied day. That's kind of what we base, the adequacy assessment from that peak, the peak design day there. So next slide here. So here's our key takeaways. We looked at the conditions before you shut the law enforcement center lot down. So that's what we call pre-construction. Based on that supply and demand number I just showed you, you had a 42 space surplus with your effective supply. That's with a 10% effective supply cushion. So it's in fact, greater than 42 spaces, but we just like to give you a cushion there. With the interim parking space adequacy, so that's, taking out those 15 on-street spaces here, that's shutting down your LEC lot. You're running out of deficit right now, and I'm sure you're aware of that. So there's been opportunities for public parking at municipal lots, so Winona municipal facilities that we've kind of highlighted in this next slide. But, a directive was issued in September, and it seems the county is, I was out today too, just to kind of confirm this, what we're calling this interim parking period we're in. And it looked like there was some space availability. I looked at the municipal lots too, and there's some space adequacy there as well. So it seems to be like people are finding these, in this 15 to 18 month interim, they're finding these public spaces. So then we added back, what would be returned after the jail is completed. The spaces you'd gain back again, you'd gain those 15 spaces back. You'd gain another 43 spaces, at the LEC site, with McCarty's layouts there. So and then with the monument site, it's currently just kind of gravel, but if you were to improve that, you'd be at a 41 space surplus. So there's some parking adequacy. It's not high, but you have a surplus. So, and again, that's what that effective supply cushion. So we kind of know there's other discussions going on. We engaged the Port Authority, we engaged the City of Winona. We know there's some other development discussions. We want to know, how that affects the county. The 60 Main site, we know there's been talks of ramps there for several years. Nothing's really materialized. So we don't think that's going to impact the 15 to 18 month timetable. So that lot's still, in our estimation, going to be a public facility for multiple users. As I said, we evaluated Fastenal's full build out, and we determined they do have a surplus of spaces. So we think there could be an opportunity, maybe for a shared parking agreement. We don't know the feasibility of this, but at a lower cost opportunity, perhaps some of that oversupply could be shared with the county. We state that because, we're looking for lower cost alternatives for you. We did look at parking garages or parking ramps, as you call them up here. And, those are about 26,000 a space, very costly. You don't have any parking rates in this environment. It's free parking. So the fact that for that to be self-sustaining will be difficult. So it will require a lot of subsidy. So that's why we kind of push lower cost alternatives for you. And then, as I mentioned, there is still the municipal supply that's going to be stable more or less than 15 to 18 month period. So next slide. Yeah, so this is kind of the development map we were considering. We looked at the Fastenal office. We looked at the surplus of spaces, the third and Huff and the fourth and Huff. And then the city and the Port Authority acquired this parcel over here on this Washington block. That's kind of one of our considerations for a parking ramp. We kind of assume that we'd look at that for you and see, about a 340 space ramp, 4 levels, 2 bays. It would be efficient, but it would be expensive, as I mentioned. It's probably an oversupply at this point. And the 16 Main development, it seems like that's not going to impact this timetable. So next slide. So this is just a map, as you're, I'm sure, aware of the municipal lots that the city of Winona offers. And then we looked at the pre-pandemic data, and there was adequacy then. I checked it today, there's adequacy now. So, we think that that's going to be a sufficient solution for this 15 to 18 month interim. And then, striping the monument site, to a more efficient lot layout. We estimate about 225 spaces plus or minus, depending on the ingress and egress of that lot. So next slide. So this is something we also kind of consider too. We're talking about supply and demand, but we're also looking at ways to better manage what you do have. So, the signage is great, but doing away with reserved parking is also great too, because that allows multiple users to share these spaces. There's nothing more frustrating than driving by an empty reserved space. That frustrates visitors, that frustrates users, and we recommend the ingress and egress of the county lots to have, adequate signage that says for county use, and then with visitors to have prioritized visitor spaces closest to the door, because, those are your customers, right? You want them have, the short-term access, they need to be closer to the door. So we recommend some stalls be signed just for temporary use for visitors. And then again, there's more intensive kind of management opportunities. We don't really see a need for, gating any of your lots. There's a lot of technology out there that can help you. License plate recognition, you can pull up right to a gate. If you're a county employee, your plates are already in the system, so it'll just let you in and out if you have you don't need even a validation card anymore. Or any kind of visitor validation program. Again, that takes layers of administration. We don't really see a need for that right now. We think with signage and kind of the honor system as it is right now, kind of, offer these spaces for employees and visitors. And then on the city side, I did see that they have 2-hour signs over here, which is great because you want those spaces turning over for everyone that's using this area. So that's great. They need to continue their on-street enforcement. We recommend that they enforce those on-street spaces. So it creates greater turnover and space availability. People see that their space is open. So perception's often some of this, in the parking, planning world. So, people don't see these spaces, they don't know about spaces. They think there's no parking, but in fact there is parking. So, and then next slide, I think I'm just telling you, I know I get into the details here about what we looked at. And again, this is assuming you acquire those 2 west lots, you gain about another 25 spaces, at a $250,000, assuming that, you can acquire that real estate. We don't think you really need it at this time, but we'd like to, show you what that looks like. And then the next slide here is the ramp concept I was telling you about. It's an $8 million, capital cost that we probably don't want right now. So we don't think that's warranted at this moment. And it's pretty telling that Fastenal decided not to build a ramp. They kind of have 3 surface lots. There's water table concerns around here. So that's 26,000 is probably very low, even once you start getting into the reinforced concrete requirements. So there could be a cost premium there as well that would inflate that. So, that's why we're kind of shying away from that as a solution. There's not a space need, for that. So next slide. This is just a look at the layout we did for you. Next slide. So I've just kind of summed it up for you here. We think you can manage, the interim, the 18 month period, and, into the 3 to 3 year kind of horizon we looked at with other developments kind of influencing this district. We think you're okay. You're gonna have a small surplus with an effective supply cushion. We recommend you do improve that surface lot. I know it's kind of just temporary fleet parking right now. So, that can create a better user experience too with signage, and people know that that's a parking lot as well. So with that, I'll take any questions. I kind of covered the whole report, and I know we have a tight agenda, so I appreciate you listening.
Any questions?
Comments too, take them all.
So are you sharing this report with the city and the Port Authority?
It is,
You mentioned both of those, and I think they've already done studies.
correct,
So this
yes.
is the 3rd study to figure out that we're okay on
So
our parking.
our scope was to hold discussions with them and consider them as stakeholders. And that was what we were scoped to do.
We'll send them a copy of the report and the slide deck so that they've got that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
My question to you, Mr. Kramer, you satisfied?
Pardon?
You satisfied?
Yes, very much.
Cool, thanks.
He doesn't,
We
he
got the
doesn't,
answers we were
he doesn't
looking
have
for.
a parking problem where he works.
No, I know.
That's correct, but I'm in charge of the facilities, and it makes a difference for everybody that works here and the customers that come here. And, knowing that, that we don't need to be looking at buying space and building ramps. And if we do come into parking needs, there's a potential to possibly lease some spaces from Fastenal if it turns out that they actually have built more space than they need every day. So, knowing those things, I think, is very valuable.
I think just to kind of tie into that we did find out a couple good things. One was we can manage our existing parking better. 2, they concur with paving the lot that we did buy, where we tore down the monument building, which was part of the building consolidation program. So that was anticipated. And then the fact that if we do have if we do need additional spaces, we could lease them possibly from Overflow that Fastenal has. So those are the kind of, the rest of it, you know, like knowing that we didn't need a ramp and that kind of thing was probably something we kind of knew, but it's good to verify those things. And I think those three things in and of itself are really important to us for the future. So.
Snow removal in the wintertime. Snow can take up a lot of parking spots. So I guess, do we do that ourselves for our county?
We pile it up and haul it out.
Yeah, I mean, well, sometimes we get it hauled out. It depends on the amount, but we do that ourselves. The highway department does that.
Yes, and hauling snow off the parking lot's not as important as opening up County Road 5 so you can get out.
Right, I agree. Timing, life is all about timing.
He's got his priorities.
Yes, life is all about timing. But I mean, in large municipal lots, I mean, it can take a lot of space, and so that can really jam you up.
It's always a balancing act between the two.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Kavesi.
there's no changes to the employee possibility of leasing spaces. And if we change that or change the price, then that would come back to the board anyway.
Right, it was an administrative directive to discontinue the reserve parking program, and we were in agreement with that. We think we need an open access campus. So, you know, if you do charge for employee spaces, there needs to be a price premium, you know, because there's always a trade-off, right? You know, your spaces need to be available for people doing the county business. And, you know, you have more influence over your employee parking policies when you do people coming and going, you know, doing county business. So.
The surplus that was identified in the report is based on not doing individual reserved paid parking spaces, because if we do that, then we need to build more parking spaces.
So we're doing away with those.
Yes, that's the recommendation, and we've done away with them as an interim for the jail project, and I guess my recommendation would be not to put it back in place.
Okay, so all these spots out in this lot are no longer reserved?
Not the employee parking ones, the ones that were contracted, you know, where the employees paid for them. The rest, there are some reserved for county business, they're reserved for the public, that kind of thing.
But the majority of these lots right out the front door were reserved parking. They're no longer reserved parking?
When you say reserve, you mean for employees?
That's what I thought. I thought
Okay,
employees paid
only some of it was, not all of it.
Madam Chair.
quite a
She's
bit.
asking it no longer.
So we're not,
No.
so the signs have come down?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes.
The poster's still there. The sign.
Yeah, we do need to go through and.
Okay.
once
And the
this is-
employees
well,
know this? I
right,
mean, is this,
yeah, but we do need to go
this
through.
isn't a union issue?
We need to go
Yes.
through and re-sign the lots at some point, once the kind of finals itself out, so.
Right, and you should consider the signage package too, that kind of uniform branding, that really helps, you know, farmers get public parking, you know.
Did you have a question or you want me to go in there?
That communicates to users.
Okay, the lots next to Attorney Sonoman's building, majority of those were reserved. Yeah, that's
love
your-
now you're building.
yeah, your building. Those are gone. Anybody can park there now.
Well, for county business, yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Holdy, did you have something you wanted to say?
Ms. Holte, did you have something
Yes.
to add?
Madam Chair, I was just going to provide
Yes. Yeah.
clarification. None of the lots have reserved spots for employees at this time.
Data, right? So, I mean, what I noticed is in the parking lot next to the courthouse.
Yeah, your office,
Is
your
that
building.
because of the hybrid situation, particularly with court administration, parked anywhere, but at the time it was reserved parking. And so would your data, I mean, would the findings change if we ever got back to the old normal, which I don't think we will, but, you know, the hybrid of working from home and,
Right.
you know, if we stay on that.
The figures we presented to you tonight was assuming 100%,
In person.
So,
Okay.
you know, if you can keep a hybrid schedule, that's to the good, yeah, because it frees up more space, but that's, you know, that's another discussion, I imagine, but it does impact parking utilization.
Well, one of the things moving forward is, and we are an automobile-driven society. How many times do you go, especially to the metro area and around here too, you see one car, one person, one car, one person. So I think something that maybe the county could look at, again, do we help coordinate any kind of carpooling? I mean, it's pretty absurd that we have all these cars and, you know, it's all one-to-one. Commissioner Kavesi.
This doesn't include any of the infrastructure. It doesn't include the signage you said, or does it include the signage?
We had general recommendations, but I believe that needs to be pursued as its own RFP process. With us, master planning, wayfinding and signage master plan.
And does it include any infrastructure for plug-in electrics?
We assume no electric plug-in infrastructure in this board, but there's opportunities for that certainly, and potential revenue too.
Right, there's other revenue sources. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll take your report and consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a former Hoosier, thank you for coming from Indianapolis.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. I think I brought the warm weather with me too. Thank you.
He said he was going to bring his warm coat, and I told him it's not 15 below, it's 40. This is short sleeve weather.
You'll be blowing back to Indiana tomorrow.
Yeah, you
will. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. Thank you. Did I read though that the city of Winona is not having a parking police position?
Yes, yes. You believe that? I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So if you park in a 2-hour, you might get by with 3 hours?
are you making, don't say that in public.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
I know, I made the mistake
they
of
still have those
parking in the same block after being
12-hour
gone
slots
for
over behind the.
That's true.
part-timers. Okay, we can
Yeah.
apply for a job and they'll ride bicycles? Okay.
Baby
all right.
horses, huh?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
No more problem. Okay, moving on. Now it is.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
9.4, discuss and provide direction for county administrator position. Page 545. Good evening, Pat.
Good evening, commissioners. We're making progress, so I'm glad to tell you that. There are 4 things that I would like for us to accomplish here this evening. The first one is down. We're currently at 13 candidates. You have been provided some information that we can have a meaningful discussion and get that down to. I'd also like to talk a little interviews. Will there be any sort of reimbursement? What is your direction on that? Also, remote interviews. If there are some individuals who are looking to avoid travel and do something remote, I certainly can share kind of my input on that as well. And then lastly, I know we were talking about possibly having kind of a group of local leaders who maybe would be able to interview the candidates, and their information, their input would then go to you. And so I wanted to have that discussion and see what your thoughts were on that. So if we can start out with the first one, which is to go ahead and look at the candidates. There were a total of 14 candidates, and the minimum was basically a bachelor's degree in business administration, public administration, or related field with 5 years or more progressive experience in a private or public organization. So I was really happy with the number that we had. Some individuals with county administrator experience. Unfortunately, we did not have any of those individuals apply. So, but we did get some individuals with a legal background. We did get some individuals with
Participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
You have a copy of the memo that was provided. The applicants will be referred to using numbers because So does everybody have?
I don't have mine with me.
Okay, I brought extra copies along.
No, we were, by your directions, I picked out my top 3.
Yes, yep. and
So
that's what
could we
we're-
take a piece of paper? Did everybody do 3 or did they do more?
Well, I mean, I filled out the whole thing, but yeah, but I,
Just see if we agree on the top 3?
So, yes, so what I'd like to do is just start out by going around the table, identifying, I'll be recording the top 3, and then we can have further discussion to arrive at that, the number that we wish to bring in for interviews. So whoever would like to start first?
Bessie, we just go around the room, just using the numbers
Yes.
that they were.
I had 10 and 8 and 13.
Thank you.
13, 10, and 8.
3, 10, and 12.
13, 8, 10.
I had 2, 10, and 12.
Okay, so I think based on that, reasonably assume that 13 will be one of those candidates. I don't know if when you identified your selection, if you that was prioritized first, second, third. Okay, but again, it doesn't matter. We're looking at the top 5 to 6, so I would assume 13. I would assume 10 based on the numbers that we looked at. We had 3 of you select number 8. We had 2 select number 12. One selected 2. So perhaps we should have some discussion on those candidates.
On which ones?
Candidate number 2. Which 2 of you selected in the top 3?
Can you give me all the numbers first that you have that?
Sure. Commissioner Meyer, 13, 10, and 8. Commissioner,
I'm just asking for all the numbers that you have that have received any votes.
okay, sure. 13, 10, 8, 2, and 12.
And 3.
And 3.
And 3.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
one more.
3.
So we've got 6 on there.
Yep, we got 6.
Okay, so then could you tell me how many votes on each one of those?
Sure. So for number 3, we had 1. For number 12, we had 2. And for 13, we had 4. For 10, we had 5. And for number 8, we had
8, we had what?
3.
3. Yeah, and 2, we had 1.
I didn't remember that there was 4 for 13. Is there, how many of us, that's number seems
There were
wrong.
only 3.
You know, I'm sorry, I accidentally counted Marcia's vote for number 3. I accidentally tabulated that as a 13.
So 3 for 13. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. So what, Pat, you want us to discuss the bottom 2, 2 and 3, that only got
So, yes,
one
if
vote?
the board agrees, we could certainly go with the numbers that we have, bring those individuals all in for an interview.
Six, you mean, all six?
Yes, all six of them. What we're going to be looking to do is there'll be multiple groups conducting interviews. It's going to be a busy and kind of a hectic day. So if there are individuals that, have maybe one commissioner, the question is, do you want that individual to come?
Well, I can see maybe two of them may choose to do some type of Zoom meeting and such because they are from Texas and Kentucky. And the others are all either right here in town or very close.
Well, the ones from Colorado.
I personally know the Colorado, and he used a Colorado address, but he may be living in Winona County.
Okay. Well, you
He
said
might be.
he's, yeah. Oh, I'm not going to give any more personal
No,
information.
no, he may be.
I'm
I
not going
don't
to
know.
say what I was going to say.
Yeah, he may. I don't know. But I mean, there is a local connection, yeah. And Zoom would be a viable option?
And that's where, I mean, if the board truly wants to allow that, however, I would caution you that, this may be your only chance to meet that individual, is to have them come in for an interview. And are you as a board comfortable having somebody that you interview via Zoom then be awarded the position?
Well, we don't have a requirement that they live in the county, so they may live, it isn't one of our requirements.
Yep, yep.
I mean, if you technically look at it, but
Yeah.
not that it
Well,
wouldn't
we're
be
not that
highly
far.
desirable.
Yes, yeah.
Pardon me?
I don't think that's not what he's asking.
Yeah.
Well,
That
if you do, okay, you're saying we're gonna make this decision with one interview.
Basically, what happens on January 6th will be these individuals will come and interview. You will then make your decision on January 6th. So if this individual does not come in, if they do it remotely, you could elect to move forward with them without having any face-to-face interaction.
But if you're looking at even four, the top four, I don't know if one interview is going to be sufficient to narrow it to one person. Commissioner Kavesi.
Don't we have department head interviews?
Yes,
And
we're supposed to have department head interviews.
Well, we haven't totally determined that yet. We have in the past. Yeah.
Yes, we had talked about doing department head interviews. We had talked about doing
Public.
kind of local leaders, if it's the school district, if it's the city. And these individuals will be giving input. But ultimately, it is the board that's making the decision. They will be helping you by going through an interview separate from the board. So there may be things that they pick up on that, doesn't come across in the interview with the board that they'll share with you to help them make the decision.
I would maybe just express that 24 months ago, I would have been very uncomfortable interviewing someone just via video conference. But I've become so accustomed to that in the last 24 months that almost seems like the normal method of doing business at this time. So I kind of, and then one of your other questions was, do we want to pay these people a fee to come in from, if they're coming from a long distance, Colorado, Texas, Kentucky? I guess I'd be, at this point, I'd rather keep the pool a little bigger and not have them here in person. My thoughts. I'm okay with being able to do a video conference. And I mean, I'm imagining we could make that pretty thorough, make those video conferences pretty thorough and at different times for the department heads, for the for the county board, I would think that we could set something up that would be fairly flexible compared to what we might have been able to do 24 months ago.
Just looking at the whole psychology of the interview process, the interaction, is there any known advantage, disadvantage to a video interview versus in person? I mean, I'm asking you as our professional.
I'm working with another community and we're talking about, just doing information gathering. And, in my opinion, there's benefit to sitting down with someone and being able to talk and being able to pick up on, body language or, how they interact, which I think is different. Again, I'm talking about one-on-one, you've got a group of individuals who are interviewing them. So, in my experience, I do think there is a benefit to having a person-to-person, but, it certainly can be done.
The benefit for you versus the applicant, perhaps? Let's say the applicant has some odd gestures or something that won't be picked up on a screen that might throw off an interview that really has no reflection on their ability to do the job, but it's just, that might be an advantage. I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody done a study at some point to determine.
And I think when you're here in the interview, there's a lot of, interaction that's happening in between interviews. Maybe chatting briefly in the hallway before you go on to your next interview, different things like that, can be kind of a sense. But no, it's certainly up to the board. If the board wishes to do, remote interviews, that's certainly something that we can make happen.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, I do think that I think that hybrid meetings are pretty hard to do when you have some people in a room together and one person online. I'll say that from sometimes being that one person online, you cannot see the faces of anybody who sits around this table from the camera. They're just tiny little things. So I think it's more difficult to do it if we do it as a hybrid. And the other thing is, I think if this person is going to move from another state, that they need to come to Winona. They need to have been here in order to help them make that decision to move. And so I really feel like they have to come here in person. And I guess the last thing is give us a ballpark of what you would think it would cost to bring the candidates that we need to here.
And typically what cities and counties do is they reimburse.
Yep.
So, it may be 500, it may be $1,000 that will be reimbursed for flight, for lodging, and for car rental, up to $1,000.
We can set a cap.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the individual has to provide
Per candidate.
receipts.
Great.
Correct.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Yeah, I would think that if I was being interviewed, it would be to my advantage to be here. So there's some incentive for them to come, or to want to come, and they need to see the organization and the facilities, and in addition, as Commissioner Meyer said, what's the town like? If I want to live here, I think I want to live here. So I would think that it would be important to bring people here. Do you usually fully reimburse, or sometimes do you give a cap?
Typically, we'll set a cap, and we'll basically that will apply to individuals who may be in state or out of state. So an in-state person is driving their vehicle and within, if it's a 5-6 hour drive, that would be obviously different than someone who's driving an hour and a half. We would reimburse them for, gas.
Do we have any idea of the status. I have to say the location, but with the tornadoes that came through, is one of these candidates victim in terms of
I have not heard it.
I would think that would put them in a
We did have one individual who withdrew. That individual came out.
So we are talking about 6 candidates. 2, 3, 8, 10, 12, 13.
Yes, if we take all the ones that were identified by Commissioner, we are looking at 6 candidates. Again, I guess my question is, do you want to bring an individual who had, had one vote? You certainly can. There's no magic number, you know. The reason why I think we go with 5 or 6 is that a lot of these individuals may have applied for other jobs, and so it does happen from time to time that you do lose a candidate or two prior to the actual interview date, but that's coming up pretty fast, generally. So.
Well, a question I have for the board here is that we have 6, but after seeing what other people voted for, does anybody want to take a minute and go back and review their notes or look at any of the videos or anything that was submitted to us that might change their things, or everybody's pretty set on those individuals? Commissioner Cressy, is there any, do you feel the need to review anything? You're set on your 3?
Yeah, and actually, the additional people were generally highly ranked. One was not, but the rest were.
Maya, you're comfortable with your 3. Commissioner Olson, you're comfortable with your 3?
You?
I'm not comfortable with some that rank higher than I would have ranked them. But there again, it's a majority. Commissioner Jacob, do you feel you want to review any?
No, I've done all the reviewing that I need to do.
Okay, all right. So now we need to decide if we want to go with everybody that got more than 1 vote, or, you know, because we got 2 and 3 that each got just 1 vote. Am I correct there? Okay.
Said 6, right? So
We could do 6.
We can do 6.
Well,
but
why wouldn't we?
Well, the question that's being raised is 2 and 3. 2 is from Texas and 3 is from Kentucky. So just as long as everybody realizes there would be some expense in bringing them here.
Couple $1,000.
If we're okay with that. Okay, and if it's worth it, and will they get a
Yeah,
fair?
I don't like the idea of getting down to 4 because, as Pat just stated, 2 of them could drop out, and then we're looking at 2 candidates, and if they interview poorly, we don't have much.
Well, we can always, we don't have to accept, any of these 6. We're not obligated.
If we have good candidates.
Yes, if we
on
have
the
good candidates,
table,
but you
and
just said if we got to some and we were questioning and we had only a limited amount and they
Well,
didn't
it
feel.
sounds to me like you're trying to save the money on the 2 candidates.
No, I'm
bringing them
saying,
in.
don't get the idea that you have to pick from even this pool. Have reposted
I'm just saying,
positions.
I'd like to bring them all in and interview them.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, I am too. Yeah, all right. I do have a question. So we're going to go with the top 6, that's good. I do have a question and we need to clarify. Are we going to have board interview them? We're having department heads interviewing them? And are we going to ask community members to interview? That's a decision that we need to. And the question I have though is that, okay, if we have department heads and we have public, can the board sit in the back room during those interviews? And that's just something we have to
In the
agree.
back of the room.
Yeah, we just have to agree that we can or can't do that.
Public.
There's no HR rule that says we can't,
No.
because it's a
certainly not.
public, it would be a public meeting,
Yep.
correct?
Correct. Well, we're going to have multiple interviews going on. We're going to have.
Oh, simultaneously.
Yeah, so you will most likely be involved in an interview while the department head is involved in the interview, while the local leaders group is involved in an interview. So
Okay,
yes,
all right.
it's going to be, because it's going to be one day and we're going to be moving 6 people around. You know, I haven't laid out the time, but I mean, it's.
Well, your comment earlier was that this is probably one of the biggest decisions we make as a board, is picking in a new administrator. And if we only get, as a board, what, an hour with this person, we're supposed to determine the next person within an hour of our time and their time. That's a monumental task.
Yep, but keep in mind, you've had an opportunity to review their personality assessment, an opportunity to look at their interview. We're going to have an aptitude test, which will give you kind of some of the reasoning, some of the logic. We're going to do background checks. So there's going to be additional information that is made available prior to the interviews. And it's a culmination of all of that that hopefully will lead you to the person who is the best fit for Winona County. You know, if you decide that you want to do another interview, I haven't had any others decide to do a second interview. But we can certainly talk about that.
Well, that would take a full board support, and right now you've only got one commissioner asking for that, so.
Well, we haven't gone through the process, so we don't know. I mean,
Well, how would you feel about going to lunch with them? You can take them out to dinner
well,
that night.
and
The
I've
night
been
before.
I've been through different interview processes and everything, and you know, just a little short story. I was in the process of interviewing for a preacher, and the gentleman that was picked by a majority of the church council, we did go to dinner, and the wife came along, and things changed. I mean, that was a religious group and everything, but that's some of my personal experience. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I have a question about our timeline. If we bring people in on for interviews on January 6th, and we're supposed to be selecting, so we need to have all the interviews completed in one day and have it all compiled and fed back to the board so that we could make some kind of decision.
Exactly.
That's, with 6 candidates and 3 different interviews, that's 18 separate interview options, 18 hours. Well, you can do the multiple.
Yes, we're going to.
Is that timeline feasible is what my basic question is, to do this and make the selection on the same day?
Yes, typically what we do is we do have kind of an action-packed day. And we start early and we go through the interviews. Basically, the input will be scanned and sent back to our staff in the office to summarize. Yes, so we try and run all that at the same time, keep things moving. But it will be a busy day. There's no doubt about it. If we have 6 people who come for the interview, you know, sometimes
There's no sleeping on it.
sometimes
We could wait till the next morning or something. You know, sometimes you go home and you think about it. I have to ask Ken. Ken, you've been through this a couple times. What, you're listening. You got any recommendations or from your experience and stuff?
How did we treat you?
What did you feel?
It was similar, I guess, but I don't know. I kind of favor more FaceTime. It could be done through online if you need to, because I think that's kind of the world we work in. But I do agree that you want to see the community if you're going to think about coming here. I just think an hour. I know there's a lot of other stuff, and I respect that, but the face-to-face time or face-to-Zoom time, whatever you want to call it, it takes a little bit more, you know, social interactions. I've been in situations where that's part of the process. You know, you go to dinner with the board, you know, and you see how everybody works together, you know, and you can pick up a lot of information. I'm not suggesting you do that, but I think the more you get to know someone before you hire them for, you know, you got to do a little courting there before you decide to marry them.
Yeah. And so could you, with that said, and I've been through something similar to that with other places. So we've got 6. Would it be at all feasible to narrow it down to 2 or 3 or something after the first round? I mean, I'm just asking, because again, like Ken just said, if you're just going to meet with them for an hour, you'll get basically a gut feeling. But is that what you want to make a decision on, is a one quick hour of interaction with an individual that we're putting a lot of faith and trust and, leadership into?
The one thing I will add is that, some of these individuals from out of state may have applied, but now that there's a travel requirement,
may drop out.
Sometimes you may have an individual who says, thank you for the offer, but I'm no longer interested. Because prior to then, it was just submitting an application and doing an online thing. Now they actually have to commit to getting an airline ticket, to coming here,
And if you're talking about a second round of interviews and they're from a long ways away, we got to bring them in again.
Right. Yep. But just what Pat said, the way the economy is and the way people are moving around for jobs, it is a very good chance that some are already maybe took a different job or will reanalyze that they don't want to pursue it anymore.
So what I'll be doing is immediately following this meeting, I'll be calling individuals to the fact that, they've been asked to come in for an interview, and also notifying those who did not make the application. I don't know how quickly they'll get back. The ones that are coming to the interview, I don't know how quickly that they'll get back. Maybe tonight that I'm able to reach these individuals, and maybe tonight.
Oh, no, don't call them at 9 o'clock at night.
No,
Well,
no, I won't.
Okay, so would it be possible, if the board was more comfortable with that, to do, if we go with the 6, to do 3 on one day and 3 on a second date, and then make the decision? And then there would be time for lunch and dinner and breakfast.
And I was just going to comment that, some communities do like a tour of the community. They have maybe a historian or somebody, they get a small bus and they take all the candidates. I'm not sure if that's something you want to do in the COVID environment that we're in. Some people will invite residents in to meet the candidates. There's a lot that we did prior to COVID, like you said, to have more exposure, to have more input, which now we aren't doing so much. But if that's something that you would like to do, we certainly could. My thought about having 3 come in one day and then 3 come in another day it's certainly an option that we could explore further.
We'd be asking a lot if we're going to try to get the same citizens to do the interviews. We'd be asking citizens to do 2 days.
To give up 2 days, not just one.
Yeah, they'd have to do 2 days. And department heads doing 2 days and losing their workload, shifting their workload. They might get
free lunch.
Maybe. Well, what's the wishes of the board?
I say we do the 6. We offer reimbursement up to, what was the money number you said, $1,000 or something? Up to?
What's a plane ticket run these days?
I have
mean,
no
that's the
idea.
biggest. I don't know.
35W.
Then we do it all in one day.
Okay. Is that
I don't know.
okay? So will we? Am I correct? My understanding, remote interviews are not an option. We want the individual to come here, correct?
Well, unless they want it, if they feel comfortable doing a remote and they think they can convince us to hire them, I guess I
think it would be their disadvantage, but I think
Yes.
we should offer it.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
I
Let them know
agree.
that there is reimbursement, or that they can choose to do a
Remote,
Zoom or
Yeah.
remote.
if they really want to.
And we can do the Brady Bunch
We did
pictures.
last time do a couple remotes.
Yeah, when we
I
hire
remember.
Ken.
Okay, and as Commissioner Kavesi just said, it might be possible then to not do a hybrid meeting, but to have it be a full Zoom.
Okay. Yeah. All right, I will certainly let them know that. Then the last item I was hoping to discuss was just the idea of having that local leaders group. And I'm just going to toss this out to start the discussion. Does each commissioner wish to pick two individuals? It could be from the school district, it could be from the EDA, it could be from the Planning and Zoning Commission, whoever it is that you would like to have involved in that interview to give you some input.
Question there. Okay, Commissioner Olson.
So typically, I think in the past, you had the prepared list of questions and they were pointed. So that would be the same scenario, so.
Yes, so basically all the questions would be run by the county board. I mean, we don't, we can ask clarifying questions as to their responses, but we want to make sure that everybody's asked the same question.
Okay. And so, but we will see all the questions before, so we'll see what questions the local leaders are going to ask. We'll see what questions the department heads are going to ask. Okay.
Yes, all of that will go.
And you say, just one more thing, sorry. When you say local leaders, it could be just members of the public, doesn't have to be, yeah, I mean, just.
Certainly, anybody you would appreciate this person's
pick.
Yeah, so the people sitting on either the local leaders panel or department head, their only job really is to score the responses.
What we'll have is we'll have a input form, and we'll ask them, what qualities really jumped out at you, and basically we'll be asking some pretty pointed questions to try and get them to give feedback. What was their knowledge base? Did they come across as being knowledgeable, and different things like that? So they can write their comments. Those comments will then be summarized back at our office, and then a summary will be provided to you. So you'll have both local leaders and to weigh with the other factors.
Okay. All right. And I will stand by my point that I would prefer to gather all that information in one day, but go home and sleep on it before I would make a decision. I think it's going to be a monumental amount of information to process and make a decision. But it'll be late in the day.
Correct.
So we'll figure that out. We'll figure that out moving forward. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else you need from us, Pat?
No, thank you very much for your time. I
We'll bring
appreciate
you
it.
candy and coffee.
We're making progress, so thank you for all
Major
your efforts.
decisions in life I usually sleep on, and this is a pretty big one.
Thank you.
Of course, I never did accept Ken's letter, so we could just hold him to a extended contract. All right, moving on. Now we're at 9 o'clock. Okay, 9.5, discuss approve bigger staff findings of fact and petition for amendment. So that is on page 546. Now is when a motion for discussion about the changing of the comp plan and the zoning ordinance for that parcel. Any other information that we need to be presented?
Maybe trying to just think of exactly what the motion should be. Help from.
Was there something in the planning document?
Well, it says recommendation is to approve bigger staff findings of fact and petition for amendment.
So it's the same.
I make a motion to approve the amendment with the attached findings of fact.
Second.
Just for clarification, then it's the finding in fact, I see page like 554.
554.
Yeah, okay, with those, there were 3, and that's what the planning commission.
Yes.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay? Okay, that is approved.
Madam
Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
we have a short break.
Yeah, that
Thank
sounds,
you.
that sounds good. All right. 5-minute break.
Still walking gingerly, Kim.
At least on the
It
lower
doesn't, it
end.
doesn't matter if people move up.
You're right, no one, no, right, that's right. I will tell you that all the time when I'm on Zoom, I got my yoga pants on.
I'm a little more.
You do have pants on?
I do have pants on, but they're sweatpants.
It sounds like they may very well.
But I knew you'd remember.
Yes, no, I do remember. Yeah, that's probably the most in-depth department head.
I mean, I was, and I had members of the, I had, department heads, potential supervisees, different meetings. Right, that's what I was talking about. Plus, before that, I had a Zoom meeting because I was in Phoenix. With my mom. And then I had another interview with February. Then I had the one with the public and the people and. I'm like, I was one month after that. And then my first meeting, which had been started paying for was the big part. And it lasted till 1 in the morning when Mother came with me. She was up visiting.
So I'm on test speaker, same as.
I wasn't back at 1 a.m. She's still.
You're gonna make it short, right?
Well, Tyler can, not really short. But yeah, I'll definitely do mine.
Still haven't figured that out?
Check out my new speaker.
Sure.
Should we do that when the board comes in?
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
Exactly. I just, and then updates that people need to give.
Oh, how.
There was a day you walk in a bank like that, you'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Now you get in trouble for not walking in a
Yeah. Yeah. So did you get it? I think it, no, but I don't know if you got back to that. On Phil, it's been,
Well, sort of. So they're only, I can mention.
well, you mentioned everything, yeah.
But it's, there's basically gonna be 8 sections that you can break it up. So we're on the first bit, the first dig.
I just don't know how long that's.
When we first dug into an old house, stuff like that, pretty much all that one.
The foundation.
So then, what, about 85, 90% not only just suitable to go somewhere else and stick with what was planned for the excavation, soil correction. This can actually be reused after it's going. Doesn't have to go leave the site.
So our kind of projected impact is a lot lower than,
Well,
at least so far.
so we're only
No?
1 of 8.
Oh. Well, the first one's good.
Yes.
Okay.
That looks very good.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but we're hoping as we keep going towards walls, that should.
To see how they really react. Right?
Seems to be a lot of technical problems today in this building. Is it the Christmas elves playing games? I mean,
Bob, it's Bob.
Bob.
Oh, maybe it's the Chinese.
The 3 o'clock health meeting had kind of some issues. And
Blame it on Bob.
Heidi, can you hear me? Heidi?
We can do it. Actually, we're
Heidi?
moving along pretty fast. I mean,
Heidi, can you hear me?
It's a big packet.
yeah, we're gonna tell the next guy, don't pull this kind of on us.
Heidi?
Yeah, I want to.
Heidi?
I want to thank all the staff that worked very hard.
Heidi?
to put this together. That was the monument.
But watch, our next meeting, there'll be 2 items on.
At the end of the year, always.
Safe drives, Pat.
Drive carefully. Be careful.
Night.
Thanks, Pat.
What's your favorite karaoke song?
Big dog just wanting to get going.
Yeah, of course.
Don't pee on the tree.
We will start on discussing an award bid for detention equipment 555. Page 555. Do you have anything to hand out to us?
I do not.
Just a verbal update.
Yep, Tyler could have talked to some people across the chair. Tyler Schultz from Market and Johnson is in cyberspace land listening.
So we don't have any.
There's nothing for this to pass out, so I'm just gonna go over the.
Hey, Maureen, I'm not really sure what the issue is. Is this something I should come in and take a look at, or?
Well, here's the issue is that if we don't do something, anyone who's going to speak externally, can they hear us?
Heidi, put your
Doesn't seem like it.
Yes, Maureen.
Okay.
That always causes.
Yeah, it's time for the chocolate. Yeah, that's right.
Updates.
Man, there's only feature they could use a chat, but somebody had to pay attention to that.
Updated the Apple phones the other day, and it.
I can't tell if they can hear us or not.
Nah, she said she rebooted and still can't hear.
Okay. Yeah, I think you should come in because we have external people who need to hear or need to speak.
Speak, yeah. Okay. I'll come in and see if I can figure it out.
All right,
I'll give it a
thank you.
shot. Yep. All right.
Bye.
When they first gave
I have like a super
That's fine,
secret
yeah.
piece of paper that shit's on.
Yeah, well, I don't know what mine is.
I say not now. Don't they always give you the option not now or
Well,
something?
well, sometimes they'll let you just like send a code to your phone or email
Yeah.
or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that.
Password protection.
They
The
saw
good
you
guys
use that
can
with
break
the mask
anything. Pardon me?
Ben?
Oh, now it's not picking, the mic isn't working?
Is it on?
It's like checking if you have any gas, right, in the car.
That's right.
Backup mic.
So I have a question, Commissioner Kavesi. Is there any charging stations in downtown Winona? Is there?
There's one at the.
Karaoke?
Oh, that's right. Okay. I
There's
guess
one at
that's-
Winona State now too. And there's one at Winona State and the dealership.
There we go.
Okay, all right. Well,
Here to
back
do
in
now.
session here. You got it working, Heidi? You good? No, it's not gonna work?
No, we can just.
We can start going. Okay, 9.6, discuss an award bid proposal for detention equipment. Mr. Buswell.
Yep. Madam Chair, County Board, Ken Fritz and Karen Sonneman, I'll say it the right way this time. My name's Steve Buswell, for those who don't know me, out in the cyberspace. I'm the jail administrator and the project manager for the new jail. On December 10th at 2 p.m., we did a rebid for the detention equipment. And what we ended up getting was 2 bidders overall. The 2 bidders were Pauley Jail and Noah Detention. Market and Johnson, Tyler from Market and Johnson is going to be doing a scope overview to make sure that the lowest bidder that got this meets the scope requirements of the bid. On December 10th, the bid had Pauley Jail at $4,512,000, Noah Detention at $4,336,700. Noah is the lowest bidder that we received on December 10th at 2 p.m. And it does have galvanized steel, the one consideration that we definitely wanted from the detention centers. Going back on August 19th, the bid from Cornerstone was $4,553,000, and Pauley Jail was at $4,680,000, and Pauley Jail was the one with the galvanized steel. So if you compare the two differences, with Noah at $4,336,700, that's $343,300 less than the bid that we were accepting from Pauley, the initial one on August 19th. So that's actually good news. And it's still $216,300 less than Cornerstone was, the lowest bidder from the first one that did not have the galvanized steel. That's pretty much it just for the bid. It actually took somewhere right around 4 minutes just to go ahead and open them up. So we did everything here. We opened it up, started it. I was present. Tyler Schultz from Market & Johnson was present, and Alex Tillman from the county attorney's office was present as the witness. And we actually just printed everything out and then had Tyler Schultz just go ahead and read it publicly over the intercom and had it recorded here too as well. It's just the three of us.
But now you said they're still double checking everything to make sure it matches up with.
To make sure it matches what we want to inside of the specs and the scope of the project.
That's being documented?
Tyler Schultz is doing that, yeah.
Okay, is it being documented?
Yes.
Okay, that he's maybe making written
Feeling
comments
nervous?
or something.
Feeling nervous about that?
Well, again, we need to dot the i's and cross the t's. And we can't just, I apologize, but we can't just take somebody's word because they might not be there tomorrow. So we need some documentation to back us up.
Yeah, what's the timeline? I mean, is it days from the 10th, or when do we complete that checking process and officially?
Well, in the original bidding, it was up to 30 days for us to go ahead and review everything and then get back to them. I know that Market & Johnson is really wanting to expedite everything, appropriately expedite everything. We are still somewhat in a holding pattern, so we still have a little bit of relief time to still look into this. We're still waiting for the last permit from the state of Minnesota Department of Labor to grant us the permissions to go ahead and actually start to put in the foundations. So during our soil correction that we're doing right now, that is going to take approximately a 3-week period. We're on week number 1. So we still have 2 more weeks before that site would even be in a state to be able to be prepared to put in that foundation. And it seems pretty confident through Market & Johnson and especially Klein McCarthy dealing with the Department of Labor that everything that they've asked us to do came back sufficient rather quite quickly with the responses that they were looking for, that we're probably just knocking on sometime this week. We should probably get it. When I say that, it'll probably not be next week, but we still have that 2-week buffer. So we should be able to get that last permit in time to still go ahead and start to do the foundation, which would give Market & Johnson enough time to go ahead and review the scope of the detention equipment category.
So these pieces of equipment, is there any supply chain issues, or when are they needed to be here to keep the project moving?
To the best of my knowledge and the contact that Market & Johnson's had, and even I did when the Trust Built who came here from Huron, South Dakota, they actually are the company that builds this for NOAA to put it in. So they're going to manufacture the steel cells. They'll actually put everything all together. When they were here, they were indicating, and anybody that showed up for it, that they were within the same lead times of the other companies during the initial bid. So we should be still pretty much right on track. With that said, when we first came to you guys with the county board with the schedule was to start on September 27th. And you got to remember now we're into December. So by the time this really gets going, we're already 3 months behind that schedule. So the 18-month aggression, I think very positive, aggressive push to have this built by Market and Johnson, but we were looking at March of 2023. Just have to add pretty much 3 months onto that right now. So we're really looking at about June of 2023 for Market and Johnson to have this building at a state where they can turn it over for us. And then we can do that transition with the staff and the dispatch like we were talking about, which would be up to 3 months.
So they'll have to extend a contract with Houston County? Wasn't that a year contract?
Houston's every
to
year. Yeah, we just continually, just perpetually do that every year for the need basis.
And these cells are actually going to be manufactured somewhere and trucked in?
Correct.
Not real green though, is it?
No,
We got to haul, because how many cells can you haul on a truck at a time?
I think it's the closest one to us at least though. So this one's actually in Huron, South Dakota. So
How many cells do they put on a truck at a time and haul?
I hope a lot.
We don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
A whole lot at one time,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know when they came out here with the demonstration, I'm just guessing they'd probably only get, I bet you at best, probably like 4 on the semi, unless they had an extended semi, maybe 6. I don't know if they're gonna go too high. They're quite big.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, we didn't say it was green.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else we need to know tonight? From you? Russell?
Yeah.
We have to
Well, it says here to
award.
discuss an award, but
No, I don't think there is that yet. Tyler's gonna have to get that
I
prepared.
think it's got to be vetted to make sure that it's in all the,
I think this is more just the information, let you know really where that we're at. The rebid went through, it was successful, and it was actually lower than it was originally. So,
but we're just going by here. It says discuss an award, so we'll just discuss tonight.
unless you're gonna give me an award.
No. County,
I will
don't-
accept an award.
Don't slip and fall on the way out. the
Yeah,
door.
that's right, don't fall down.
Okay, all right, thank you, thank
What
you.
was that?
That was 9.6 and 9.7, right?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Well, is that the whole update on the jail construction? Do we need to know anything
Yeah,
else?
For the most part, so, and just in case you want to know, for the soil, the soil correction, so we had that little hiccup or that bump in the road with the soil correction.
Mhm.
And so when Braun Intertech was brought in, they're actually reviewing all the excavation and what needs to go into the dump, to whether it be a farmer's field somewhere with a permit, or what could go over to either Rich Mike Roots here in Winona, or actually what could actually be used on site. So we had to actually grid all this up, and then Market and Josh at Market and Johnson came up with 8 different zones. So it was reasonable to actually break this up and actually look at it and make sure that each zone was specifically looked at, that soil was put on a specific spot here at this site, so it wasn't mixed with anything. If it was able to be used on site, it'd actually just get dumped back into that hole. And like I was explaining to Administrator Fritz just a little while ago, that we're on zone number 1 right now. It's a good sized zone, probably one of the bigger ones. When they first ripped it open, they discovered foundations and a lot of bad fill. So when we're talking about contamination, we're not talking about chemicals or petroleum and stuff like that. We're talking about a soil correction that's needed to be able to house put a building onto it and have a foundation that won't sink or settle and mess up the building itself, because the soil is not appropriate. So, but then again, when they pull this out, there's certain type of soils, and I'm not a Ross Dunsmore for the county by any means, so I'm not going to try to pretend I'm a Ross Dunsmore. But when the soil has so much inappropriate fill into it, it has to go to potentially a landfill, because it has too much concrete, too much brick into it, or some kind of sludge or some other kind of stuff into it that could have been from years ago of someone burning coal and just dumping it in their backyard. So if there's too much of it, that has to get hauled off to Austin. And so some of that is why Braun Intertech's brought into that. So that did sort of slow up this process a little bit as well. But again, we still don't have state permit. So we weren't able to build any sooner. So there's nothing that's going on right now that has stopped us from building, other than really receiving the state permit from the Minnesota Department of Labor.
Whose responsibility was that? Was that ours or was that Klein McCarthy?
They're on, everything's been sent to them. The typical response time has never been this long, according to Klein McCarthy. And then the state's response back to us was that they're 4 inspectors down, plus the COVID, just sort of hit them extra hard. So they're just really trying to maintain, let alone keep up with everything. So So they're really just trying to catch up, I think.
That's an answer I hear way too often in my
Don't
opinion.
disagree
but
with it, but that's what we were told. that,
Yeah,
you know,
I know, that's
They
what
think
we're,
Time is money for us.
It's potentially a lot. Well, here's the fact. So the fact is, if we started on September 27th, 2021, the weather was in the 40s and the 50s. Tomorrow's going to hit the 60s, and after that, it's going to plummet back into the 20s. So then you start to talk about basically the winter cost of doing the building and stuff, and then just heating the ground, let alone all the concrete that's in there and keeping things from freezing.
costing us
And you
more.
can't- you
And we
can't
have
put
to
any
extend
wire
our
in.
contract with Houston County, because we'll be at least minimum 3 months before we, additional.
Yeah.
So we can get-
Well, the contract for Houston's typically the year, so it's, and whenever we would not continue doing that, and the sheriff can follow up if there's something that I'm not completely accurate on, but my understanding with the contract is we do it for the year. If we decide anytime prior to that year expiring, we can bow out of it by notifying Houston. So we would already be valid for 2023. So whether we stopped in June of 2023 or September or even December, that contract's still valid.
It's valid, but we could shorten it because there is an opt-out clause as
Correct.
most of the contracts. So, yeah, it's just an added expense. Anything else? Okay, all right,
Nope, thank
keep
you.
moving. Better have everything tied down tomorrow because it might end up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
It's gonna blow. It's gonna be dangerously windy, they said. Okay, 9.8, discuss and or appoint citizen advisory committee volunteers, 557. Commissioner Jacob.
I feel like we go through this process every year. And I understand that's how staff would like to get ahead of this and be able to notify these people. Every other year is an election year, so we don't even know that what the board is going to be. This year is not an election year, but we don't know who the chair is going to be. And since the chair appoints the planning commission, that really affects who might be available for these other positions. So to me, in the interest of, not looking to the public that anyone's could be perceived as trying to kind of manipulate who's remaining for the planning commission by picking some to, I'm going to make a motion that we table this until the new chair is seated.
You want to wait for the second first?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner
So
Meyer.
at a minimum, I would like us to reopen Board of Adjustment. So we can get some additional candidates, since the candidates we have are not eligible to do the residency requirements. We're going to open up the library board anyway, right?
I think we got an email about that.
Yeah.
But I understand it. I question the Board of Adjustment, and I know we have that rule that only one can live in a municipality. Is that our rule or is that state statute?
It's in the ordinance.
So it's
It's
our,
in the zoning ordinance.
okay, so it's our rule. It's not by state statute that only one can live in a municipality.
Off the top of my head, I believe that's correct.
Okay, all right, just, I mean, so we have a motion and a second to actually have the discussion at our first meeting in January. Is that- Because of how,
And then we had discussion, but not like an amendment, I guess, to.
well, and I think it's already, I think the email about the Selco said we would be posting.
Yeah, posting
opening,
that.
Right, and so, and as a rule, we post anything that has an opening, and I don't know if there's, well,
I would be receptive to that as an amendment to my motion.
Okay.
but
right,
that
any,
I have a question.
well, and then we have to, the Stockton Rolling Stone Minnesota Watershed, we have a vacancy and there were no applicants, so we need to, to any that have openings. Commissioner Kvesi.
The Parks and Environment Committee does meet in early January. So that would possibly be a problem. When's our first meeting in January?
January 4th.
January 4th.
Then there's another one. That's by, you have to have the first Tuesday after.
That's our meeting,
not
not
the
the
Right.
park meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not it's a board that doesn't control revenues or anything. It's advisory. And yeah, it might be unfortunate that it's not fully staffed at the time. All right.
Okay,
we
so
have
I
a
would make
motion.
that as an amendment if you will accept
So
it.
you accept the amendment to basically to post any openings where we did not receive applicants.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Does that need a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, all right. So we vote on the amendment first, that we post for all committees that we do not have adequate applications for.
Yep.
Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay? Okay, so we'll direct staff to repost. And then the original motion is to take this on our consent agenda meeting in January. All right, okay, and Commissioner Kavesi?
Yeah, I have one question. Looking for the committee. The person that we just reappointed for 1 month,
For the, that was for the Personnel Board of Appeals, wasn't it? Last meeting? Wasn't that Personnel Board of Appeals? But they didn't apply.
but she stated in her application that she would be interested in extending her term. Can we consider that an opening and contact her to find out if she would like to be considered as an applicant?
Technically, our policy says you have to reapply, but I mean, we could,
Well, I think the
depends on the
timing was,
board. Yeah.
timing was not
And
appropriate.
someone can certainly reach out to her and let her know, hey, put your application in. So then, I mean, so then we're not like
Yeah.
treating her differently than the population.
I just remembered that because I remember when we appointed her, it was only for a month and I thought, oh,
Yeah,
that's
it was a strange.
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Okay,
So the meeting, to put this on the meeting in January.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay? Okay. All right. 9.9.
Testing audio. All right, no audio.
I hear voices. Is that Stephen got us working? Discuss, approve, modify recommendations, and approve resolution for elected officials' compensation, page 640. And we have something new at our table?
Yeah, it was just a replacement to the pages that were there, so it is different. As you know, the board goes through this each year to examine the compensation for elected officials. The 4 positions being the county sheriff, the county attorney, the county recorder, and the county auditor treasurer. In the past, we've tried to match these the wages to the average of the comparable counties. We did that analysis and found that 3 of the positions could be adjusted based on those county averages. One of the positions was already a little over the county average and was recommended to be adjusted upward. Included in the recommendation is a 2.5% increase for 2022 because all the numbers that we get for the comparables are 2021 numbers, and we anticipate that those will go up based on whatever their county applies for 2022. So that puts our elected officials in the same position as those. 2.5% is what the unions at this point have agreed to for 2022. So it's consistent with that. If you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Questions? Yeah, you have me totally confused now. We had set this in action a couple years ago that you were bringing them up to the averages. Have we not gotten to the averages?
Yeah, but the averages move each year. So
Okay, but so normally we have the wages and we give a 2.5% increase off of what they're currently receiving. So you're saying now the averages have moved, so that's a big percentage increase, and you're saying the 2.5%?
it may or may not be an increase depending on the averages. In one case, for instance, the average didn't go above the current compensation. In other situations, the average moves, and usually, the average will move sometimes because different positions are given more money or less money. You have a new position, but also because not all counties give the same exact amount every year. So, we could be giving a 2.5% increase, and you could have a 3.5% increase in the comparable counties, and our people would be falling behind. So with other bargaining groups, what we do is we usually do what we call that a market adjustment. We usually do the market adjustment every couple of years so that we don't have annual fluctuations like that, but then you have a little catch up every couple of years to make sure you get to the average. But in this case, with the elected officials, we've been doing it every year. And so you do see a smaller fluctuation, but there is a fluctuation from year to year. So again, it just moves because not all the counties do the same thing.
Unfortunately, I got this handed tonight now.
Yeah. Right.
So what do we have percentages?
Yeah, so if you
Everything's
look at,
based on percentages. So
well, if you look at
Ron Gander, you're saying 152,367. So what was his, do we have what he was paid in 2021?
Yeah, it's 145.
Where is that?
Hang on a second. It's 145,025.
So if you look at this replacement sheet, here's,
All right.
this is what he had,
I'm sorry, that was the
and
average.
this is what's being recommended.
Okay, so on the sheet that was handed out, the Winona, the 145 is the current.
The 145 is
Was-
wrong.
was-
It's 148. I don't know why that's.
It was
that's wrong.
148?
Yeah, it's 148.
148,650.
All right.
148,650. That was for wages for 2021. Okay.
Right.
Okay, then attorney, what was is that
right?
that right? 150?
Yeah, I believe the other ones are, but for some reason the one was wrong.
That doesn't seem to jive with the verbatim in your request, but okay, you're saying that was 150?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at then
But in the verbiage that we got from the attorney, I thought it was a higher amount. Okay,
Oh.
anyway, all right, and so the recorder is the right amount, 106, but now you're not,
Right,
So
but that
he-
means he doesn't get a raise.
but you're not giving him a raise.
right, because the average, even with the 2.5%, was only 104,000.
I'm sorry, so the average, okay, no, that's right, oh, okay, 102. But do we
Average
know,
fall, or what happened there?
do we know, did somebody brand new come into the position?
Probably.
Was it appointed versus
A number of
elected?
different reasons. We don't know why. We just know what their current salaries are.
Okay, and Sandra Soup, the auditor treasurer. Average is 130, but then in the verbiage there, she was asking for less than the 135.
Yeah, all I'm doing is applying the average and then 2.5%. What the individual elected officials requested or didn't request isn't reflected in the table. It's the formula that I used was the one that matched the policy of the board.
And just remind me again, every percent of levy increase generates approximately, we're up to $200,000?
200,000, yeah, it's
Okay.
a little over that because it's a $20 million
Yep.
levy.
Okay.
I guess I'm gonna have to say that I think that the recorder deserves to have a raise.
Yeah, this isn't a reflection of the recorder's performance or anything like that. It's just this is what the policy was. So that's what I reflected in the recommendation. And I think actually, if I remember correctly, the board made that same adjustment last year to the recorder's position, I believe.
So I think 2.5% would be 2,673.41.
Oh, you get your calculator
I
out,
do have it out here, hold on.
please. Nine, 649?
609.
609.
41.
I was rounded.
Oh, and 41 cents?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Did you check me? Am I right? Okay.
All right, the wishes of the board. Any discussion, further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
in this
Commissioner Ryan.
job market, I think it would be horrible if we lost any of our valued employees. I mean, I know they are elected, but
Do we have to have a motion to move the county recorder to get to award that 2.5%, or are we just considering that?
If you just pass the resolution with the 109,608 in it, instead of the 106, that would do it. You don't need two different motions.
I'll move to go to average plus 2.5% with recorder at 109.
109,608.
Second.
608.
I'm sorry, you're just doing the recorder, or you're doing the whole thing?
No, I'm across the board.
Okay,
Making a motion to go to average plus 2.5% with the recorder at 109,608. With the exception of the recorder.
with the exception of the recorder, okay. All right, so the motion is, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Olson to adopt the resolution with adjusting the county recorder to 109,609.4. Well, we didn't put the cents on there. So $109,609, correct? And everybody else is what's recorded on, not the original packet, but the sheet that was handed out. Okay, all right. Any further discussion? Okay, same sermon, different year, same sermon. I do not agree with averages of these counties. I don't feel these counties are, we're not in the same ballpark as most of these counties. Most of these counties are very different than we are, and so why we continually to use them and make them for comparisons, I don't understand. I don't agree with, so I will not support the motion. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Nay. All right, passes. And just remember that 1%. 1, 2, 3, 4. Lots of money. Okay. Moving on. We're down to 9.12. And Pat?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, yeah, Pat, we can hear you. We got a little hum there, but that went away. Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I'll be providing the October update. In the revenue fund, it starts at $12.3 million. Actual revenues are $700,000. Actual expenses are 1.4. Ending cash is 11.6. For the total year in the revenue fund, cash starts out at 14.3. Actual revenues are 14.2. Actual expenses are 16.9. Ending cash is 11.6. The variance in the revenue fund is a negative 2.7 compared to a negative 5.3 last year. For all the funds being presented, it's a negative 5 million compared to a negative 8.3 million. I do want to point out on this document, community services is at a negative $2 million. Actually, in the month of November, they are positive of about almost 400,000. As of today, they're negative again of just 20,000. So any questions on this document?
Go ahead, Pat.
If no questions on this, we'll go to the summary cash flow. Summary cash flow starts out at 18.5 million. Beginning cash, actual revenues are 30.5 million. Actual expenses are 35.4 million. Ending cash balance is 13.6. Variances are a negative 4.9 compared to a negative 8.3. Any questions on this document? If not, we'll go to the summary budget. Summary budget, we're in October, we're 83% of the way through the year. Looking at the funds that are being presented, the only one with expenses at this time that are higher than the 83% are human services, which is 85%. And again, we're watching these every month to try to bring each fund in as close to budget as possible. Any questions on this document? If not, thank you.
Thank you, Pat. 9:13, discuss and appoint interim county administrator. So the question is in what capacity is Maureen Holte serving? I thought her title was assistant, so we need to change it. Isn't she assistant county administrator?
Yeah.
Okay, but we need to change that for.
Just appointing her like we do when there's a vacant department head or anything else, we appoint some interim until the person's appointed. Need someone to fulfill those functions.
Do we have complete authority, or doesn't Maureen have to tell us whether she's willing to do this?
Well, she vetted the agenda.
Maureen, we'll ask her if she's there.
Yeah,
Maureen
Maureen,
Holte, are you
yeah.
there?
I am here.
Okay, all right. Are you willing to accept these responsibilities? And is there any, we seem to be, is there any compensation that needs to be considered with these new responsibilities pending? I guess it really depends on how quickly we find a replacement for the, the main administrator.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts there?
Most, yeah, most certainly, I will serve in the capacity of interim. If this goes on for an extended period of time, I do ask the board to consider some additional compensation.
And in your opinion, what's more than 2 weeks? What's your idea of an extended time frame?
If it goes more than a month after Ken's gone.
Okay, I think, are we in agreement to discuss it if for some reason we have a delay in hiring?
We have to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Okay, all right, so I think consensus is we would, okay, well, I need a motion to appoint interim, right?
I move.
Is that the right term?
Second.
Okay, all right, so I hear Commissioner Meyer and Commissioner Kavesi. Oh, Olson seconded it or first it?
It was Greg's motion.
Okay, you first it?
First it,
Okay,
yeah.
Commissioner Olson, it's 10 o'clock. Commissioner Olson made the motion, second by Commissioner Meyer.
No.
Oh,
Commissioner
Kavesi?
Kavesi, yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Kavesi.
I was too late.
You were too
on
late.
everything.
No, well, I got a strong right ear. To appoint Ms. Holte as the interim county administrator for Winona County, with the understanding that if it goes more than a month, we will discuss some additional compensation. All right? Any more discussion?
Thank you. Ms.
All right.
Holte, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any other, well, we didn't vote yet.
Yes.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay? Okay, all right. Ms. Holte,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, 9.14, discuss and adopt resolution for the commissioners' 2022 salaries. Commissioner Jacob.
Well, I'll maybe just make the same statement that I made last year, probably in the year before. I don't feel like I'm giving myself a raise. This is about setting the salary for this position. And terrible things happen. I could walk out the door, get run over by a bus. This position needs to be filled. I think it would be hypocritical. I have always supported just being fair, average to all the employees, and to be fair with the taxpayer. I don't support paying them more than average, but to come up with a number that's not arbitrary is average. So I know in the past, there's been no appetite by this board to do anything other than leave the salaries where they are. But I sincerely want the community to be able to look at this position and run for it and have a salary there that's, you know, if they're a working person, and I want people, more than people who just don't need money to run for the position. So for me to say anything other than whatever is average, I just think would be hypocritical with where I've been on everything else that I've stood for over the years that the 10 years I've been in office. So I support the position being average.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I think, I'm thinking back to our conversation about the outside agencies. And when we have services that are being provided for homeless people, low-income people who otherwise would be homeless, I'm thinking of Semstra, and we're not giving them any cost of living increase to try and do that good work, I can't take a cost of living increase. So I don't feel that until we're able to fund those services adequately and pay them some kind of change for the inflation that they have to experience, that we shouldn't be giving the commissioners more money.
Any other discussion? No, we don't have a motion on the table yet. As of yet.
I'll make a motion for resolution A.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Kavesi for resolution A, which in the packet is, it's a 0% increase, correct? State keeps it, that how I'm reading it, yeah, no increase, okay?
And I will say that, and I respect what Commissioner Jacob has said, and I respect what Commissioner Meyer has said, and that's my motion.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, the combined increases that people asked for was about $78,000. So I totally agree that until we can apply cost of living and reasonable increases when there's increases in responsibilities, that we're not doing our jobs. So I would say resolution A.
I didn't hear what's your last comment?
Yeah, that's why I'm supporting resolution A.
Of no increase. Okay, all right. And I kind of fit that mode that Commissioner Jacob was talking about, old gray-haired lady that doesn't need the money. No, I've always felt that this is a community service job. I never got into it, you know, for the money. Public service, I think it's a big part of public service, and our job is, you know, that's part of it. That's part of that's the undocumented, untaxed benefit we get of the job of being able to do some public service. And
I'm just saying that I'm differing from the rest of you, as you're viewing this as justifying what you're worth or why you should be paid what you're being paid. I'm saying that I'm voting for what the position should pay, regardless of whether it's us sitting here or anyone else. So I feel like it's just hypocritical for me to say anything else than what I've said with every other position in the county. It's not about me or us. It's about just being fair and being fair with the community. So
I respect.
Yeah. So.
And I have a constituent that always finds it odd that we set our own salaries. He feels it should be on a referendum. How can you set your own salary? I said, every government body does it. And it is an oddity and stuff. I said, how you adjust that is through elections, you know, and stuff. So that's my explanation. That's the world I live in. So we have a motion to go with 0. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
I voted aye.
Oh, okay. All right. It passes. Thank you. 9.15, discuss nuisance ordinance. And we're at the point, now wait, okay, in our process.
This is the real one.
This is, so we're talking about directing staff to move forward with this?
I have some very fast slides.
Okay.
So, so nuisances, and I lumped in outdoor storage because that was part of the original discussion. Next slide, please. So in our definitions, we have things like injurious to health, offensive to the senses, interfering with the comfortable enjoyment of life and property, and unreasonably annoys. Considerable numbers of the public are unreasonably annoyed. This is very darn difficult for the zoning and planning staff to do anything with when somebody calls. Next slide, please. So it's a balancing act. A lot of the folks that are the subject of continual complaints, and some of the files go back 12 years in my department of lack of resolution.
Only 12?
My position changed hands kind of a lot too, but you know, then you get to the point where you dig up, oh, that's how far it got. But part of the problem is the previous slide. So it's a balancing act. Some neighbors are hoarders. Tidy neighbors driven to call and complain. I don't want to look at it. It's preventing the enjoyment of my property. Others are like, I need all this stuff. This stuff is valuable. So next slide, please. So like I said, the complaints go back a long ways, you know, 4 to 12 years. Old Elma Road, edges of Minnesota City, Goodview, the Arches, they all have things in common. It's not like the larger agricultural areas. And we were talking about this before. I was talking about my great uncles and cousins with farm equipment in the groves, with parts that they used and things. They all had it. That's not what this is. This is people that are more cheek by jowl, if you will, living in closer proximity where they're looking down at the stuff. They're driving by it all the time. This is not stuff that's hidden out in large 40-acre parcels. It's the places where we have the greatest amount of density, where they're the old platted areas like Dakota and Dresbach, or they're areas that are adjacent to cities. Next slide, please. So we have very little in the way of what we can work with when we have a property that's got a dead skid steer, an outhouse that's tipped over, piles and piles of pallets. There's no putrescent waste. There's no garbage bags with garbage in them, but there's stuff all over the place. That's just one sample. There's many, many more. Inoperable vehicles include no tabs, but what if we have dead lawn tractors, like 40 of them? They're not vehicles. What am I going to do with that? So we need to be maybe looking at, next slide, please. Perhaps, greater density areas, maybe an overlay district. We know where the areas are that are the problems. I never get any complaints out near the Whitewater unless Commissioner Jacob runs into somebody that's been dumping over the edges of a ravine. You all know about dumping at Farmers Park. I mean, there are things that happen like that as well. But what we're talking about is chronic accumulation of stuff where people have property lines that are kind of close together. Next slide, please. So several of the people that have called repeatedly since 2018, now it's 2021, I started here and I didn't make any promises that we were going to do things that we don't have zoning ordinances to enforce, but I do want residents of the county to know that the county board is talking about this and planning to give either staff, legal department direction. But there's a lot of frustration. Like, why isn't this moving? And there's been a pandemic. There's a lot of important things going on. But when residents don't see anything happening, you can see where they're a little bit frustrated. So I think it's great. I found the dog picture with one ear up, that we're listening. And all of you were listening before as well. It's just what kind of direction you might like us to go. Next slide, please. It's probably the last slide. Yep, it is. Instead of a shirt.
That's a very lovely dog he found too. He's very precious.
So we're not being asked to take any action tonight. This is just food for thought.
Madam Chair,
I mean,
I would actually like to pass it to the Planning Commission. I think probably staff needs to be involved, maybe to look at what possible things could be done. Sounds like we don't want to do it everywhere. We want to have some kind of density.
I would be careful with language that you're using.
Oh, sorry.
If you talk about like initiating anything and passing it to the planning commission, you trigger 60-day timelines.
Oh, no, no. no.
But you might want to suggest that the planning commission consider some options before an action is taken.
Right, okay.
Put it on that, you have that list
The
of
list.
things.
Right, so that, I might come back with that list to have it reordered a little bit, because remember, I was talking about the sign
Prioritize.
ordinance, because we're in conflict with state ordinances in this case. But, you know, there's some other things that have been languishing too, like this. But like with the solar ordinance, you know, we came to the planning commission, you know, with presentations, they made suggestions, we came back, tweaked things, you know, well before any action took place, then went from the planning commission to the board. And of course, we wouldn't be precipitous about it. So there'd be plenty of time to, you know, kind of look at it after we work through some things with legal and also, you know, look at some other ordinances from other counties and see what they've been able to do that's been effective.
Okay, so the guidance is to put it on the list,
Yeah,
put it on the list.
yeah. Do we need a motion to do that?
I think if we make a motion.
And that's
The
it.
60-day rule?
Yeah.
Oh, then I don't want to
I
do
think,
that. No.
yeah, this is just a consensus. We'll put it on the list.
Assistant County Attorney Nuttall said that wouldn't necessarily kick the 60-day rule into effect if it's on the list.
Well, we're in consensus on the list, so
So,
why don't we just leave it on the
Let's
list?
go ahead. Is that okay?
Does that give you enough direction?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, some of the counties have gone as far as working one-on-one, you know, with folks that have, you know, hoarding disorder. And I just don't know that we're staffed to do that. You know, we're not trying to be punitive. We're trying to get results from it. But we're finding if we just send a letter, it just happens that they're just back doing it again and again. So some of these recommendations may include administrative penalty orders or something like that. You know, we're not trying to throw people in jail for this. We just want to get the properties cleaned up and get compliance out of it. So that's kind of the slant that I would be in favor of taking with the material that we come back with.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
All right, we're to committee reports. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I just had a quick one. Hiawatha Valley Mental Health made a presentation this afternoon at the Health Services Advisory on intensive treatment foster care programs that they've been providing. And that was, I think, very valuable to the Human Services Advisory Committee. The Hiawatha Valley organization has been going through extensive self-study with staff and the executive committee and the board because they are moving to become CCBMHC, and that is a community certified, community behavior management health certified option. And they're set to become that in January. Along those lines, they've streamlined their intake. There's now like one point of intake. They've trained staff who take phone calls to do some screening so that they can do a better job of getting people on into services beyond to reduce the wait times. And their staffing levels have been good. The person hired for the alternative ART, the city program, that they hired a person and she is now shifted to the day crisis team. So that's okay because the city backed out of that program. And they're full with their psychiatry program. So that's really good news. So just wanted to highlight that community agency with the work they've been doing.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer.
Minnesota Inter-County Association met, and I shared some of this with Commissioner Olson. We had an update on the $7.7 billion state budget surplus, which was really positive. What they pointed out to us is that the ARPA money is on top of that, right? So there's actually more like 9.1 billion. It's going to cost us almost $4 billion to fix the unemployment funds, but we still have like $5 billion left over in the surplus. And Matt Massman pointed out that 5.8 of that is considered to be consistent year over year, like that's going to be from here on out. because we have a progressive income tax and wages are going up, then that means that future revenue is also expected to go up. And they shared that for reference, the entire property tax levy that's collected by all 87 counties in the state, that comes to 3.5 billion. So the surplus far exceeds that. So of course the question was asked, do you think we could just not have a levy this year? But he did not seem to think that was going to happen.
But we may affect the pocketbook if they don't tax Social Security. State of Minnesota taxes Social Security, and that I don't know what dollars that is, but that's something I'm following right now.
Go for it. You go for it.
At this age. All right, anything else to come before the Winona? Attorney Sonneman.
Could the board just go back to confirm and clarify that the sheriff's salary for 2022 is actually 152,652, which if you look on the chart, is the average plus the 2.5% for 2021.
And that's not on the resolution?
It's not, the resolution had 152,367, which was on the previous resolution. Nick, just so that it's
What is it?
if you look at the chart that Mr. Fritz handed out this night, the sheriff's salary for 2022, as you adopted it just tonight, would be 153,652.08. I just wanted to make sure that because the
That's what
resolution.
it says, right on this chart.
On the chart it does, but not on the resolution. that you adopted. Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
well, this is what you made the motion on,
Yeah,
wasn't
I just,
it? Yeah.
This is what I was looking at when I made the motion.
I agree. You made the
I
motion.
understood, yeah.
And I agree, Commissioner Jackson, thank you very much, by the way, for making the motion. We all appreciate it. But the resolution doesn't reflect what you.
Gotcha.
So you want a remotion?
Yeah, as the parliamentarian, what is your recommendation?
To make a motion to,
Make a motion to say what Karen says.
and it's 10,
Okay, so we're
10,
adjusting
10.
the resolution. So that gives me a pulpit again. Okay, do I have a
Yeah.
second? You gave me the pulpit again. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
There's a way in our order of do it correct. I don't know whether we care to do that.
I just want the record to reflect. that
There's
the
a way to go back and recall an item.
So
For the benefit of
Administrator Fritz, what was our levy this year? About 20 million?
19?
Yeah, 20, I don't know exactly. It was over 20 million.
The reason I have such angst with this, and so the people, that this is affecting, why I have such angst. Now, I didn't redo the figures this year. I have a note I carry around with me in my little book here. The comparable counties, the levies they had back in 2019. 2019, this is old data. But Sherburne, they levied $48 million. Ottertail, 40 million. Goodhue, 35. And we were down at 19 at that time. So that, unfortunately, that's what I got stuck in my brain, that we're not comparable. They are much larger counties. They have much larger budgets. And so things are different. That's but okay, we have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Nay.
Need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
You guys, have a good Christmas.
Yes.
Merry Christmas.
See you in a couple weeks.
No, we'll be back before, no, we're not.
28.
20, yeah, we're after Christmas.
in the morning, right?